Okay, so here we go. We're talking about the origins of the world from many different vantage points. So we'll go ahead and get started. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. Wait, or is it in the beginning, the God Enlil separated the heavens and the earth? Or is it in the beginning, the goddess of the saltwater ocean, Tiamat, mated with the god of the freshwater, Apsu, and began the world? Oh, or in the beginning, the sacred Mount of Atun arose from the primordial oceans of Nu. In the beginning, Ta created the world from his thoughts and speech. In the beginning, Hepat, the earth mother goddess, and Teshub, the god of heaven, mated and created all the gods who would make the world. And the list goes on and on. No matter what the civilization, the culture, or the religion, there exists a creation story for the most part, some kind of myth and narrative explaining how the world began, with some understanding these truths literally, figuratively, or somewhere in between. Questions of how the world began are as ancient as humanity's curiosity of how the realm of nature operated. For as we observe the processes of life, moving from birth to death, we inevitably begin to inquire into the bigger questions of where the entire world came from, asking if this world also experienced the same processes of all living things, having a beginning as well as an end. Was the world born to like everything else? Or did it always exist? Because early on, humans came to believe that nature was infused with spiritual forces and that, in fact, all things had life in it. Early stories of creation are always discussed in context of these spirits, in a belief that, of course, is known as animism. Eventually, specific natural forces such as wind or rain, or even more specifically, a particular tree or a mountain were connected to one specific spirit that could then be called upon to be the to assistance or to be named over for protection from them. Eventually, these named spirits evolved into gods. So we're going to start off with, we're going to go through this journey. We're going to start off with the ancient Sumerians. Uh, and you'll see after a while patterns will emerge. So I'll explain it as we go. Sumerians believe that the universe and many of the gods existed back to an undetermined period of time, but they also asserted that the heavens and the earth was once united. We see this in many mythologies from around the world, that the earth and the heaven were once one. Let's go to the next first image. According to the Sumerian, the Song of the Hoe, and you're seeing the image of it right there. The sky god Enlil finally separated the heavens from the earth, with Elel separating, organizing it. And so you have this idea. It goes as follows. Not only did the Lord make the world appear in its correct form, the Lord who never changes the destinies which he determines in Lel, who will make the human seed of the land come forth from earth and hearken to separate heaven from earth in order to make it possible for humans to grow, in whose flesh came forth. And this is actually whose flesh comes forth is actually a name of a cosmic location. He first raised the axe of the world at Duranki. Duranki. What's Duranki? Duranki means mountain house. Next image. Mountain house or assembly of the gods. So we have recreations of these mountain. This is the one in Nippur. This is a mountain house. So there is a ziggurat association. So the ziggurats are not simply places where you put a temple on top. They are sacred mountains. Of course, in ancient times, when you want to talk to the sky gods like Anu and others, you are going to have it on top of a mountain because they can hear you better. But also, there's a connection with the sacred mountain of the creation. So in the beginning, the sacred mountain is sometimes where everything comes forth. Daylight was created via Enlil's hoe. It's made of gold, and the blade is lapis lazuli. And so, in fact, humans are made from a brick mold with his hoe. So you have that idea, right? So that's good. So what happens is that with Elel separating the heavens from the earth, it was then up to Enki, the god of wisdom, to organize it. In another work known as Next Image, known as Enki and the World Order, Enki wanted to prevent the world from falling into chaos, and so organized the gods to oversee various parts of its operations, with some gods in charge of the waters, while others administered the weather or vegetation. Now, via the casting of lots, the principal gods divided the larger sections of the world, with Anu receiving the sky, Enlil gaining the earth, right? And Enki apportioned the realm of the sea. This may seem a little bit familiar, right? The division, of course, into three different parts. Let's look at me for a little bit. And then, of course, we see this also with Greek mythology, right? We see this with Zeus receiving the sky, with Poseidon receiving the sea, and Hades receiving the underworld, right? So, but the gods were not too happy about creating everything. The Sumerian story known as Enki and Ninna told how the lower gods they grew weary of all their creative work, and so they complained to the primordial mother by the name of Nama. Next image. Nama is sometimes known as Namu, and she is often later connected with the Babylonian Tiamat, right? So they complained to the primordial mother to find a substitute to alleviate their labors. They're tired of working. Nana told her son Enki to fix the problem, to find some kind of substitute. So these lower gods are sick of doing the work. They just don't want to do it anymore. So what are we supposed to do? Let's take a look at me. So what happens? What sucker is going to do this work? Hmm. Well, the lower gods don't want to do it. Ah, let's create some slaves to work in a creative sense. Make them do the work. Let them do all the labor. So they came up with this idea of creating a lower life form to do all their bidding. And so the idea of creating humans was born. That's right. We're there to be slaves. Nana needed some clay, put it in her womb, and so the first humans were born. Enki proclaimed, "O mother, decide on the faith of the newborn. Let Nimma put the image of the god on it. This is the human." In the variation of this myth, the gods went directly to Enki in his underwater home to find some way to alleviate their extra workload. Enki came up with the idea of creating humans in this version of the story. So, in this version, he's the one who collects the clay from around his aquatic home, and he created humanity for himself. Now, while he breathed life into the clay, breath of life, Enki made sure that he did not provide them too much breath. for he did not wish for them to live forever like the gods. I think it's interesting. So what happens very much in ancient Mesopotamia and all around the ancient Near East, there's this idea of the breath of life, right? That the spirit is what animates us, that keeps us moving, keeps us vivacious, keeps us alive, right? And so in Hebrew, it's ruach, right? God gives us the breath of life. I thought this is interesting here, though, is in this version, Enki realizes that you can only give him so much breath. If you give him too much breath, we'll live forever. So you got to limit our breathing there. Now, according to the story, humanity then came out of the seas, since this was where Enki resided. Yet, the first humans didn't do very well because the gods did not bother to supply them with what they needed to survive. The earth was devoid of much life, still very barren, and there was no grain to make into bread or sheep's wool to clothe them. This earth is just like a not very hospitable. I think it's interesting is that there's other myths that has the same idea where humans are not doing very well uh, when they first exist. You even see a little bit of that in the Prometheus stories, and where hey, humans are just like, hey, we're just we're eating raw meat, living in kind of simplistic filth, and it's just men. There's no women. They're just sitting there until Prometheus, of course, gives them the gift of fire. So, yeah, kind of a dark view of the beginning of humanity. So humans went about naked. They ate grass like wild animals. Rivers were not around either. So humans were forced to drink whatever the ditches filled. You can see that the Mesopotamian deities are not exactly that kindly to humans. As a result, humans, were forced to drink these ditches, and they're not very healthy. So there is a work. We'll just look at it real quickly, and this is the image of it. The next image. It's called The Debate Between Birds and Fish. There it is. I don't want to spend too much time with it, but there it is. Enki decided to give humanity healthy water sources, and so created the Tigris and the Euphrates, as well as smaller streams and watercourses. He filled these bodies of water with fish to eat. He also created sheep so they could clothe themselves. Other sources of food were created from birds and to wheat. And so you have that. Let's see me again. Thank you so much. So sheep are the answer for so much. I gotta tell you, I'll just have an aside. The Mesopotamian civilization, the Mesopotamia, by the way, that is a umbrella term for more than one. Mesopotamia is a region, Tigris and Euphrates, and beneath that you have the Sumerians, you have the Babylonians, also known as the Akkadians. You have the Assyrians, and then you have the Neo-Babylonians. So those are all Mesopotamian civilization. You also need to be aware that according to Jewish belief, Abraham was from Ur, which is in one of the city states in Mesopotamia. But life was just not very easy in ancient Mesopotamia, and so they didn't quite love their gods. The weather it's either rain and floods or dry as you can believe. And so the Mesopotamian civilization had to come up with things to try to survive. So they came up with something called irrigation. Maybe you've heard of it. Came up with the idea of crop rotation. Good idea, right? To keep the nutrients in the soil. And then what they do, remember the sheep I just mentioned? And so what they have is the sheep, they have like say they have a field and it has cut into four parts. One of the four parts was always left open for like a year or sometimes 2 years so it could regenerate. And they would have the sheep eat the grass there and go number two, hence fertilizing it. Yeah. So and then of course they would kind of rotate around, crop rotation. They came up with all these great ideas because the gods simply are not helping them, so they're going to try to help themselves as much as possible. So there's not a lot of love there, and this is why you can see where they're thinking, hey, you know what? Maybe as they're going through all this hard labor, maybe the gods just created us to be a bunch of slaves. I'm sure they're feeling that way, you know. And so there you have it, right? So, oh, by the way, as a result of that, then of course people kept swooping down from the mountaintops, stealing all their food away from them, especially at harvest time. And so they needed weapons to defend themselves, but they didn't have any raw resources, thanks gods. So what they did is they developed ways of exchange, but the whole idea of just bringing trading via pack animals is pretty slow. So they came up with this idea of having a wagon, and they created the wheel, and they created roads to do that. And then they had to keep track of who owes what to whom. And guess what they came up with? Writing. So, hey, struggle is the spirit of innovation. Thank you very much, Mesopotamian civilization. But you can see not a lot of love for these gods, and they do feel like they're being treated not too well. One little other aside, and that is that what's holding this earth together is this. In many cases, they have this idea of that there's this tree. This tree is holding things together. It came about at the very beginning, sometime at the very beginning. A tree of life, a hulupu tree they call it, came about. It connected the heavens and the earth and the underworld all together. And Inanna finds this tree being blown by the south wind, on the Tigris, and she plants this tree of life in her garden. And what happens is a serpent goes to the roots of this tree of life. An Anzu bird is at its branches, and there's what's called Lilitu or Lilith or owl or something. We'll talk about that another time. In its trunk, and so then of course Gilgamesh, the epic hero, he slays the serpent, he slays the bird for Inanna, and then the tree is cut down and made into Inanna's throne, and or it's honored. But this is another concept connected to this beginning of the world. You start with a world tree that unites all these realms together. This world tree concept you see in Norse mythology, you're going to see in Mayan and Aztec mythology, you're going to see this all around the world. So these are interesting connections. Concept of the sacred tree is even in the East. I always think of to myself, you have the Buddhist stupas, which is the holy mountains, and on top is the sacred tree. So there you go. So what happens is the world is created, and how it's created. As a result, the gods fashion this world, and they make the world this disc. It's a disc. It's like a disc. It's flat, but it's circular. So you turn it, it's a circle, but it's still flat, flat Earth. However, what they have is they have the dome or the canopy of heaven. The dome or canopy in heaven that's on top. And so while it's flat here, you have this dome, but this dome also extends below. And so what happens is that while the earth is flat, you're like in an egg, and the egg turns back and forth, and it's perforated with little dots, holes, and that's where the stars shine through. So this is why you see by the seasons, either the circle turns or the earth turns. Got it? And then of course there's like these gods that are flying around that don't fit in with the fixed stars, and they're called, later on the Greeks will call them planeos, which means wanderers. We get the word planet from that. And these are looked at as independent gods. And this connects to your fate. So this is how the world was then forged. In some cases, there's a tree that unites these realms together that connects them. So there we have it. Sumerian creation story. How we doing? But we move on to ancient Babylon. So Let's go to the next image. So by the time of the ancient Babylon, other creation stories develop. One of the most important, known as the Unuma Elish. As in the ancient Sumer, the Babylonian established that the gods existed before the creation of the heavens and the earth. In the beginning, there was a vast ocean called Tiamat, who was personified as a mother goddess. And we're seeing Tiamat right here. Pretty attractive there, right? She was paired with a male consort or husband called Apsu, who represented the fresh water. Okay, so while she is the salty water, he is the fresh water. So the salty water is a Tiamat. Let's see her again. I think she's in the next image too. So somebody decided to be artistic about it and kind of show what Tiamat would look like when drawn with a little bit, I would say, of a modern eye, right? Okay. So you will see that there we are. She was paired with a male consort of her husband called Apsu, who represented the freshwater. The salty waters of Tiamat mixed with the fresh waters of Apsu, resulting in many divine offspring, each god matched with a goddess. So the plethora of these children were always in male female pairs. Apsu did not like his offspring, for they were much too noisy, and decided that they should all be killed. Let's look at me for a second. You know, let's go here. Seems to be a theme of humanity being too noisy. We see this in the Epic of Gilgamesh, for example, right? Humanity, we're just being way too noisy. The Council of God, they all meet together and they go, you know what? I guess since humanity's so noisy and we can't sleep, uh, they should all be destroyed. And we're going to go ahead and send a great flood to drown them all. And that's what happens in the Epic of Gilgamesh. Well, we're seeing this in another story right here. For they were much too noisy, and they decided that they should kill them. Tiamat protested, but her husband was resolute on eliminating them. Fearing death, the newly born gods appealed to the god Ea, the god of water, to save them. Ea agreed to do so, placing Apsu under a spell to force him to fall asleep. So, so he could, kill him. Then Ea and his wife, Damkina, then decided to have a child of their own, giving birth to Murdoch. Okay, so let's take a look at the next image. And there's an image of Ea right here. In the watery Apsu receives another god. So we see this image here. It's a good image. Next one. And this is paired together, and we saw Tiamat, and here's Marduk. Okay. So of Marduk, the work known as the Enuma Elish states, well, this obviously he doesn't quite look like this in the description, but here we go. It says, 4 were his eyes, 4 were his ears. When he moved his lips, fire blazed forth. Large were all hearing organs, and the eyes in like number scanned all things. He was the loftiest of the gods, surpassing was his stature. His members were enormous. There's another translation I could use there too, but anyway, he was exceedingly tall. Unquote. The sky god Anu next gives Murdoch control over the 4 winds. So much power, but Murdoch becomes too enthusiastic, creating great sandstorms with hurricane forces that anger Tiamat and the other gods to the point where they can't sleep. I don't know what's going on. These gods, they're just wanting to have, all they want to do is have a good night's sleep. This looks like the goal, right? Uh, so so what happens? Um, Yeah, so chosen as their champion, Tiamat confronts Marduk because, he's making way too much noise. To assist her, Tiamat asks the mother goddess to create 11 monsters and to put them in service of her new consort and husband, Quingu. Next image. There's not that many images of Quingu, but there you are, Quingu. In fact, she makes Quingu the head of all the gods. This new elevation upsets most of the other gods. As the time for battle approaches, the god Ea asks his father Anshar, king of the junior gods, what he should do. Anshar tells Ea and his brother Anu to appease the goddess Tiamat with magical incantations. Next image. But this tactic fails. You see, there's Tiamat right there on the bottom. See how she's a dragon there. Murdoch then states that he will fight Tiamat as planned. But he adds the conditions that if he is victorious, he becomes the head of the gods. After they agree, Marduk fights and defeats both Tiamat and Quingu. Uh, you know, I do have to say this as a comment. Ancient mythologies love to have a plethora of gods and goddesses in their theogonies, in their cosmogonies. They just love it. And that's great, but not great for oftentimes for humanity today. We're trying to comprehend keeping track of all these names. But there you have it, right? So Marduk fights and defeats Tiamat and Quingu. Marduk now takes Tiamat's carcass and he splits this carcass in half. Let's just see me a little bit. He splits this carcass in half. It describes it split in half like a dried fish, putting one part of her body high above and making the heavens out of it, and then taking the other part of her body and placing it below to become the earth. So, therefore, the heavens above is made out of one part of the fish body, or I should say, the serpent body of Tiamat, and the earth below is the other part. Okay, because the heavens above, made of the carcass of Tiamat, consisted of too much concentrated water. Marduk decided to stretch her skin to alleviate the extra weight. Marduk next creates stars in the skin, so he's putting like little dots in it, and assigns 3 stars to each month, thus creating the calendar. Marduk also establishes the sun and the moon. Remember, we talked about those floating things, right? And so creates the day and the night. He even creates his own planet up there. How about that? Tiamat's body is further torn into smaller portions, resulting in clouds near the heavenly realm and mountains near the earthly realm. So clouds and mountains are related to one another. Um, but we're not done yet, right? Murdoch makes Babylon his sacred city, building his special temple here, known as Iskela. Here, the gods could rest while they're visiting Earth. Let's go to the next image. Marduk creates us from the blood of Quingu. That's right, from the blood of Quingu. That is us, you know. Yeah. So humans are created for two reasons only. First, as consistent with the earlier Sumerian legends, humans were created so the gods did not have to perform menial labor beneath their dignity, were again made as slaves. And second, humans were made to worship the gods by providing the service of constantly offering sacrifice to them, both meat and drink offerings. And I know this doesn't seem at first to make a lot of sense. So follow me, if you will, on this particular notion. So what happens is, look at me for a few moments. What happens is this. Ancient humanity believes that to keep the gods, the goddesses strong, they need to have sacrifices. This goes all the way back to the Paleolithic, Neolithic age, where the concept is that life feeds upon life. That's just basically it. We everything that we ate is living, isn't it not? Right? Most of us had something related to life, or byproduct of it, like milk, or of course, eggs and meat and vegetables and fruits, all that, even wheat. It's all living. Animals too eat life, and so they have this idea that if we need life to live, so do the gods and goddesses. And so if we feed them the sacrifices, it keeps them strong. It makes them happy. They're more willing to do things for us. If we don't give them sacrifices, they become angry. They starve. Early myths from all over the world has this idea of the deities, their stomach is rumbling. We got earthquakes, we got volcanoes. Don't want to do that. So you got to make sure you feed the gods. So sacrifices, reciprocity, it's all about keeping things going. You just got to, and so this concept is there of feeding them. Okay, according to the Assyrians and Neo-Babylonians, the gods dwelled in a place known as Absu, which translates as either deep waters or waters of knowledge. Let's go to the next image. So Enki, the god of wisdom, was believed to dwell here with his wife, uh, Damo Guma, and his mother Namu, as early as the ancient Sumerians. So here you got an image here of Apsu, as well as Tiamat, right? So eventually Apsu becomes understood as both an underworld dwelling place of the gods, Apsu, as well as a deity. As in early Sumerian stories, his mate was Tiamat, the chaotic goddess of the saltwater oceans. And so together, they make all things. Once again, Apsu is connected to the fresh water. Tiamat is connected to the salt water. Next image. And according to Babylonian creation in the beginning, Apsu and Tiamat were the only beings around. When they mingled their waters together, they gave birth to the other gods and subsequently everything in this world. Nothing existed before these chaos gods. So the Babylonian creation epic Enuma Elish says, next image, when in the height heaven was not named, and the earth beneath did not yet bear a name, and the primeval Apsu, who begot them, and Chaos, Tiamat, the mother of them both, their waters were mingled together, and no field was formed, no marsh was to be seen, when of the gods none had been called into being, and none bore a name, and no destinies were ordained, then were created the gods, all of them. What I find is interesting from this particular work here is that in the beginning, everything starts with chaos. You're going to see this idea again all around the globe. You're going to have this idea that you have chaos, and then chaos becomes ordered. We see this even in some Greek creation stories. You also see the fact that it's not only a chaos, but you take a look and you have this idea of water. You have this idea of primeval water, like this ancient ocean. And so the beginning, you have chaos and or a chaotic ocean moving about. Again, we see this quite a bit. Even the ancient Egyptians have things beginning in an ocean. I just think that's really interesting. Let's go to the next image. So eventually, there will be an orderly universe that's created. Tiamat was known as being a rather wild kind of woman and was often labeled as chaos, or total nuttiness in the universe where nothing makes sense. However, it was the great hero Marduk who killed Tiamat and put the world in order, according to this. You see here is a good image of a sky vault, the star, moon, and sun. You see the earth and the water. The only thing I would correct on this is that this vault continues as an orb beneath. Let's go to the next image. Together, they first produced, so they're ordering things, salt water, fresh water, and what's created first by them, emanating from them, was Lamu. This is the image of Lamu, as well as Lahamu. Now, seriously, so one we spell in English form Lahmu. That is the masculine form, and the feminine form is Lhamu. And so Lamu and Lahamu, they are the sacred gatekeepers of the realm of Absu, of this realm. Now, Lamu, the word actually, this is an image of Lamu, one of them, actually means hairy, and he was a protective deity and is often depicted as a bearded man with a red sash upon his head, with some scholars believing the name of Bethlehem actually derives from his name as opposed to the word for bread. Uh, Lamu was sometimes viewed as a servant also of Enki and Murdoch as well. Um, and he was known for his protective role as guardian of the sea. Sometimes that role extended to doorways. In this context, Lamu was not one, but many. So they're not demons, but they are multiple spirits. There are a whole group of them, but they're not full-fledged gods because they're not wearing the horn tiaras that the gods do, but they're used for protection. The Lamu also took the form of various monsters at times. They took on, like for example, in some cases, they became the Mush Usu. The Mush Usu, those are they have two horns on their head and snake-like tongue and a long neck and tail, lion-like forearms and hind legs and talons of an eagle. Sometimes the Lamu became known as a Banmu. These are horned snake with two forelegs and wings, like kind of like the Greek Hydra. And then you have the Kusoraku, which is the bull man. You think of the Minotaur with this, and sometimes the Aguli, which are the lion-headed. So they can come. They're not exactly demons, but they're demon-like. However, in some contexts, and sometimes we get to the Assyrians, they do become protective demons. And in some cases, they say that they were demons or deities that revolted, and they were taught a lesson, and now they're forced to do their protective work. So there you have it. Next image. So here's one of the images there. As you can see, um, yeah, uh, there you go. Um, let's take it down for a little bit here. Okay, so what happens now, right? You Now when it comes to the Lahamu, uh, that's a little different. It's the female version, and basically, she has a red sash on her head, like the Lamu. Although sometimes she's depicted as a sea serpent. And so the idea is while Apsu and Tiamat represent fresh water and salt water, Lamu and Lahamu are viewed as representing their silt. When Lamu and Lamahu copulate, they give birth to the gods of the ends of the heavens, known as the Anshar, and they give also birth to the goddesses of the ends of the earth, known as Ishar. Now let's look at the next image I showed here. So the Anshar and the Kishar met at the horizon. There they are. And hence, here they produce Anu, who is god of heaven, and Kis, the goddess of earth. In order to alleviate the lower gods from so much work, of course, we know where this is going, right? So Once again, there's too much work going on. So let's get to the next image. In order to alleviate the lower gods from so much work, the goddess Namu, known as the womb mother, sometimes with the assistance of Enki and other times Enlil, mix clay with the blood of the god Geshetui. We're seeing this Geshetui here. And Geshetui is a minor god of intelligence. And so this is Geshetui. And fashion from him 7 men and 7 women. The Geshetui aspect of humanity was their intelligence and soul as opposed to the material body created from the clay of Namu. In addition to the blood of the Geshetui, all the gods then spit upon the clay too, according to the Atrahasis, an Akkadian creation and flood account dating back to the 18th century BCE. These are really, really old stories. Okay, so what happens now is once again is life, humanity is created uh, with this addition of the Geshetui. Now it's interesting. Also, you have the idea of us being created by spit. We could be breathed in life. I guess we could be spat out. No matter what, um, you can see it's it. These are this story is not something that seems exactly completely uplifting, because guess why we're made? Once again, according to the Assyrians and Neo-Babylonians, we are also made as slaves. In some stories, we are made to continue to mine. At first to mine gold and find lapis lazuli to enrich the gods. We are at their beck and whim. Uh, these stories give birth to other ideas. If you guys ever seen Stargate, for example, although there's a slap of Egyptian mythology on it, you have this idea of humanity as slaves, and you can see this also with the ancient alien guy. They're always talking about that. Really, the Anuki are aliens, and they are the ones who are enslave humanity, or to make humans to be workers, but we rebel and yada yada. But still, these stories do have a mythological background that's very much part of the scenery of Mesopotamia. So we're moving on to Egypt. Let's go there. Contemporaneous to the Mesopotamian civilization, ancient Egypt has its own plethora of creation stories. In general, the Egyptian creation story begins with the world emerging from an infinite sea. Now we get to the image. Sorry about that, Margie. Um, and this period is known as Zep Tepi. So there's Zep Tepi. Translated as the first occasion, the primordial water was called Nu, which means the abyss, with this ancient ocean surrounding the essence of life, much like a liquid bubble or a primeval egg. Nu was both masculine and feminine, with his male side called Nun, depicted as either, next image, depicted as either a frog or a man with the frog head, and a female side called, so this right here you're looking at right now, here's Noon, and the next image, and a female side called Nunette, shown either as a snake or a woman with a snake head. So here we see Noon and Nanette together. No temples in Egypt were dedicated to Nu. But as for the male Nun, he was declared as father of the gods by the time of the Middle Kingdom. It must be said that most Egyptians agree that the first god of creation was the mysterious Atum during the Old and Middle Kingdom, who self created himself as he emerged from the primordial waters of Nu in the form of a sacred mountain. The only exception being those in Memphis, where Ptah was the god who formed the world. But you have these various stories. Let's go to that image right there. So here we go. So uh, here is the emergence of Atun, arising as a holy mountain from the primordial waters. Once again, we're back to the primordial waters. And so he began to generate the world. But just how he did this varies from legend to legend and from time to time. In one version, Atum first created the god Shu. Shu, let's look at me for a little bit. Um, I don't know, why not? So Shu uh, was the personification of the air, and the goddess Tefnet was a personification of water or moisture. And so these two are created, right? So once again, you got Shu, personification of air, and Tifnat, the personification of water or moisture. How he creates these is through various means. In some cases, he spits them out of his mouth. There's lots of spitting going on, as you hadn't noticed in the ancient civilizations here. Sometimes spitting out of his mouth. Other times, get this, he sneezes them and they come about. And in some cases, he masturbates them and they come about. In the latter version of masturbation, Atum's hand represents his female aspect that is capable of generation. And so this god really is both male and female in aspect, and both are with him. Atum's spittle or semen then creates the gods who would continue making the world. As for the reason why Atum created the world, many Egyptians believed it was because he was lonely, that he wanted company. What is fascinating about this is that there's something, just keep track of this. Many of the legends around the world have sometimes a primordial god who is lonely. We'll see this lonely. And usually, if the god is lonely, it turns out that that civilization has a positive view of that particular god. We're there to give them company. If they're not lonely, oftentimes those civilizations see them as less positive. Now, the Egyptians, unlike the Mesopotamian civilization, the Egyptians absolutely love their gods constantly. So he's lonely. He wants to have company, right? And so he has Shu and Tefnut. Let's take a look at Shu and Tefnut just for a split second. I have a little cartoon showing them, showing his kids, his spittle kids, right? There they are. Shu was the god of air, right? Sister was Tefnut, the god of rain. Atum was pleased. Atum was proud. There we go. Sorry, just had to show that. But yeah, so it looks like to me things are going well, right? However, his children, Shu and Tefnut, were both too curious to stay close to their parent and left Atum by himself and traveled about the vastness of the primordial oceans. And so, wow, he's feeling lonely again. So Atum, next image, generated and sent out the Eye of Ra to find them. Fortunately, the Eye of Ra was able to find them, and this is a representation of the Eye of Ra from that time. So what happens is that, let's look at me for a second. So what happens is that, oh, Atun is overjoyed. He sees Tefnut again, right? He sees Shu again, and he's so happy. He's weeping, and tears are coming from his eyes, and those tears of happiness and joy become humans. I got your attention now. Wait, what? So many Egyptians believe that we are the tears of joy that comes from Atun's eyes as he's reunited with Shu and Tefnut. You see what I'm saying? They love their gods. I mean, that's Pharaoh's like, I'm a tear of joy. So in other words, the idea of happiness, the idea of joy, the idea of no longer being lonely is part of the reason why we exist. I don't know. I think it's kind of beautiful. What do you think, huh? Okay. So there you go. I love the fact that you never ever hear these stories. So uh, now you. So there's another creation myth. Let's go to see this place. It's from Hermopolis. Next image. Hermopolis, as you can see, where it's located right there, right? Hermopolis is down all the way at the bottom. So that makes it in Upper Egypt. I know. Lower Egypt is up and Upper Egypt is down because everything's turned around. I always think to myself, because the Nile goes from south to north. So, it's the realm of the north, which is Lower Egypt, was connected to Seth, and Upper Egypt, which is south, was connected to Horus. And so, yeah, there. But anyway, that's the way it's all flipped around. It's always interesting because the Egyptians, when they explored other places, they were confused. They're all, hey, all these rivers are going the wrong way. These rivers are going north to south. They're going, that's not the right way, because all they know is south to north river, and that's the right way. So the world's kind of flipped around. Anyway, so the myth of Hermopolis. Oh, next image. Let's take a look at Hermopolis. I think I have an image of it, what it looks like. It's a pretty cool place, right? Next image. In this story, while Atum is still the creator god, he will generate specifically 8 other gods who continue creation, and they're called the Ogdod, with the 4 gods and the 4 goddesses paired as couples. We've seen this before, haven't we? As discussed, Nu, the representation of the primordial waters, became understood as the male god Nun and the female goddess Nunet. The next pair was Amun and Amenet, representing the air as well as invisibility. Note that Amun is introduced in the Hermopolis myth as merely a nature elemental god without the grandeur he would soon receive. The third pair was Kuk and Kuket, representing darkness. The fourth divine pair was Hu and Huhet, representing eternity. So I think it's interesting here. So you got the waters paired up, you got air paired up, right? You got some darkness paired up, and finally you got some eternity paired up. Yet the Ogdod interacted, and they realized they could not fully create without giving birth to a further god that had the ability to make them all work together. How do you make the air and the water, and the darkness, and the idea of eternity work together? This would have to be something that's other than themselves. So it has to something that illuminates them. It has to be a God of light, the God of the sun. Yes, it was Ra. So they all came together. They merged into a mound of dirt upon the ancient ocean, and they waited. And suddenly, this celestial bird laid an egg upon it. When the egg hatched, Ra emerged. The 9 gods then united with Ra as their head and then created the rest of the world. Again, you got to love the creativity behind this, right? You have all these pairs going on here, right? Um, Later on, next image. Later on, Atum and Ra merged, becoming Atum Ra, and so another myth was created to accommodate this new understanding. In this version, the Ogdog interacted and created a lotus bud that was Atun, that rose to the surface of the primordial waters. And when the petals of this blue lotus opened up, it revealed the beetle Kefri inside. So here's Kefri, the beetle, who was not only representing the morning sun, but was understood to be Ra himself. Kefra, or Ra, then transformed into a weeping boy. You got this idea of crying again. this weeping boy. Let's go to see this weeping boy. Next image. There it is. Um, and his name is um, Nefertim. And Nefertim, so as Nefertim weeps, as he's crying, who, of course, remember, he is Ra, right? As he's crying, each tear becomes a creature upon earth. Once again, we are created as a result of tears. Nefertem, excuse me, is still understood as representing the blue lotus, as well as its sweet smelling fragrance. Uh, he is often declared as he who is beautiful and the water lily of the sun, often depicted as very handsome young man with beautiful blue water lilies upon his head. Of him, the Book of the Dead declares, "Rise like Neferutim from the blue water lily to the nostrils of Ra, the creator and sun god, and come forth upon the horizon each day." Egyptians often carried images of Nefertum for good luck upon their bodies. Eventually, the creator god Ptah will be viewed as his father, while either Sekhmet or Bastet will be understood as his mom. So once again, he is beautiful. This is still, admit it, this is still a rather lovely story, right? You know, this beautiful boy whose tears create all life upon it. Uh, I hate to do this right now, but you know, does this contrast a little bit to Mesopotamia? Are you seeing a slight difference? Yeah, right. You see, these people love their gods, but not so much the other civilization. Okay, next image. So, in another version, yes, another version of the creation myth in Egypt. This is from Heliopolis. So you see Heliopolis right there on the map. So now we are in Lower Egypt, which is to the north, right? Atun rises as a mound. Oh, let's take a look at the. Let's take a little quick look at the city. Yeah, there it is. It's very beautiful in ancient times. Yeah, great. Next image. Okay. So Atun rises as a mound upon the primordial oceans, and he generates Shu, the god of the air, and Tefnut, the goddess of water. Next, Shu and Tefnut copulate and produce the earth god Gib. This is Gib. And uh, uh, the sky goddess, excuse me, Nut. Gib and Nut then had 4 children. The first child was Osiris, god of regeneration. The second one, of course, is Isis, goddess of life, magic, and rebirth. The third child was Set, god of chaos, and the fourth child was Nephthys, symbolizing the process of dying, but also protection. In a sense, while Isis represented the process of gaining life, Nephthys was the opposite force, representing the process of dying, yet kindly so, acting as the nurturing nurse as the life gradually passes away. The Pyramid text states it well by proclaiming, "Ascend and descend, descend with Nephthys, sink into the darkness with the night bark, ascend and descend, ascend with Isis, rise with the day bark." Thus, the new Akdod, the 8 gods of creation, now composed of Shu, Tefnut, Gib, Nut, Osiris, Isis, Set, and Nephthys. So we can see that here, right, in this particular image there. Let's go to the next image. You can see it more clearly. So here's the ordering right there. You see there is Atum, Shu, Tefnut, Gib, Nut, and then Osiris, Isis, Nephthys, and Seth. So we see them all together. Let's go to the next image. So what we see here, right here, is again Nut, right, above, and you see Gib, the earth, below. Let's take a look at me for a little bit there. So what happens here? It's an interesting story. So this sky goddess, Nut, was typically depicted nude and often appears with her body covering the sky with legs and feet on the ground. Sometimes Shu, the god of the air, holds her up in the middle. Gib, of course, as is the earth and reclines beneath her. Nut has her headdress on a headdress a pot that most believe represents a uterus. At times, rather than a human, Nut is shown in the guise of a cow covering the heavens. According to the myth of Ra and Nut, the sun god was fearful that Nut would have children. So Ra was afraid that Nut would have children because then he would have possible rivals to the throne. And so he decreed Nut shall not give birth any day of the year. And that seemed to settle the matter. At that time, however, the year only had 360 days. And so Nut was bound to that set number of days. And so she put together a plan with Thoth, who's the god of wisdom, to work around Ra's edict. Thoth noticed that Khonshu, who is the god of the moon, he liked to gamble. Yeah, the god of the moon likes to gamble. I know you didn't know that. He also noticed that he wasn't very good at it. So Toth set up a game whereby Khonshu lost. And the deal was if he loses each time, he has to give up some of his light, and which he uses to illuminate the moon. So Khonshu kept on losing to Toth, and so eventually Toth had enough light in his possession to create 5 more days, making 365 a year. Taking advantage of this adjustment, Nut produced 5 more children during those 5 days, giving birth to Osiris, to Horus, to Set, to Isis, and Nephthys. When Ra found out he had been tricked, he was angry and forced Nut to stay away from Gib for all eternity. But it was too late to undo what had set forth. Nut's father, Shu, god of the air, was entrusted with the job to keep them apart. Okay. Now, according to Egyptian mythology, I think we have a next image. So there you have it. She's very estranged. She is pulled far away, as you can see. Uh, poor Nut. Next image. Osiris. According to Egyptian mythology, Osiris used Nut's ladder to enter the skies and to eventually escape. Osiris declared, O my mother Nut, stretch yourself over me, that I may be placed amongst the imperishable stars which are in you, and that I may not die. Because Nut was believed to have saved Osiris, and through him offer possible salvation for others who believed in him, she became connected to rituals related to the afterlife, and her ladder depicted on various tombs. Accordingly, the righteous souls of those who died would be drawn into her heavenly realm, where she relieved their hunger and thirst with food and wine. She told the righteous souls, I am Nut, and I have come so that I may enfold and protect you from all things evil. Once again, Nut is a nurturing mother who wishes to protect. Next image. The Memphis creation story is completely different. Next image. There's Memphis, not the Memphis, United States. This is Egypt. This has to do with Ptah. Next image. Wherein the god Ptah, that's Ptah, Ptah, who was the master craftsman, he created and then molded the world. Ptah was self-generated. He arises out of the primeval mound known as Tatanen. Ptah's creation of the world was not through physical activity. It came about through his thoughts and felt, and through the power of his words, it was created. That's right. So his thoughts, right, and his words, the sound of his words create the universe. let's talk about this a little bit. We'll take this down there. So what happens? Thank you. What happens is this. So the world is created as a result of saying a word, and the word has a creative force in it. The sound in and of itself is what makes the universe come about. This is a very important moment when it comes to mythologies, especially the creation of the world, because this idea, which is pretty early on, that we see this in Memphis, we're going to see this also in Judaism. We're going to have the idea that God speaks, right? And things are created as a result of his words, right? We also see this in the Gospel, John, chapter 1, right? Where the world was created through the divine word. Yeah. This is where that which is spoken is effective in a magical sense and having creative power. And in some versions, he is shown as a potter. Ta is, and he's forming the clay, and he speaks or breathes upon it, and it enlivens it. He gives it life. It gives it a soul, so to speak, which I do think is pretty interesting in the story of mythology, right? Um, uh, Another creation story of Thebes, popularized during the Middle Kingdom and then in the Second Intermediate Period. Um, uh, Amun replaces Atun in the primordial myth, with Amun rising from the vast expanse of the dark oceans. It was now Amun who was the force behind the creation of the Agdad, yet he was always described as hidden and a mystery. Amun was said to be beyond the sky and deeper than the underworld, transcending all other gods. In fact, all other gods were part of him, merely aspects of Amun as the ultimate deity. Now we move from there to the Hittites. Next image. The first gods formed heaven and earth on a place known as Euberius, using a knife made out of copper to cut the heavens from the earth. This knife was then placed into a sacred storehouse. The sanctuary of Yazukaya in central Anatolia best demonstrates the Hittite creation story through its reliefs. Located just outside the ancient capital, Hittite capital of Hattusas, Yazukaya is set at an ideal location where a sacred spring flowed from the rocks, after which there's a small alcove. Carved in the living rock between the 15th and 13th century BCE, there's an extensive chamber that is flanked by depictions of two grand processions. Next image, with a line of goddesses on the east side and a line of gods on the west side. The two processions appeared to meet at the rear wall of the chamber, where Hepet, the Hurrian Earth Mother Goddess, and Teshub, the god of heaven, are depicted in the guise of a sacred marriage. For through their intercourse, all of nature is created, along with the seasons. Through their sex, the Hittites believed the world was not only created, but is continually created and regenerated. It's pretty cool, right? Okay. Next is Zoroastrianism. Next image. Zoroastrianism originated in Persia. So devotees of Ahura Mazda. So what happens is Ahura Mazda is the great deity of light and goodness, and is believed that from the beginning of time itself, their god occupied a realm of life and goodness above, while Arumanyu dominated the realm of darkness and evil below. In order to defeat Arumanyu, he emanated via his six divine sparks, known as the Amesha Spenta. So these are the Amesha Spenta. You can see them all there, right? Which I think is really interesting because when it comes to the Amesha Spenta. Um, uh, two are gendered neuter, two are gendered masculine, and two are gendered Amartot and Havertot are gendered female. And so what will happen is that these are all aspects of Ahura Mazda. So Ahura Mazda is one god, but he is also this six, which I think is fascinating because he has six sparks that come from him. Anyway, so let's take a look at Ahura Mazda, a depiction of him. There we have the mighty Ahura Mazda with his great, and who he's opposed to is Agromanyu. Let's take a look at the god of evil. There we go. Well, Amen, they will sometimes say. Let's look at me for a little bit. So let's talk about this creation story. So what happens is, uh, uh, um, so yeah, we'll go ahead and take it down. I'll just be talking. So what happens is that you have this interesting situation where Ahura Mazda, he emanates the Amesha Spenta, these six divine sparks. Agromanyu, who is the god of darkness and evil, the spirits, right? He is below, and what he does is he mimics and he emanates these six demonic spirits that counter those positive sparks, the Amesha Spenta. So it's like, okay, the battle's on. We're competing apparently. If you can do it, I can do it better. If you can do it, I can do it better than you. There's kind of a thing going on there. And so what happens is that Ahura Mazda, he emanates the spiritual realm known as Menog, and it comes out of him. And so what will happen is Agromanyu will emanate a cheap copy of Menog as a counter move. So about 3,000 years later, Ahura Mazda emanates the physical realm known as Gitig. Guess what? Agromanyu will then emanate his version, evil version of Gitig in response. It's kind of like, we'll do the evil version, so back and forth. So Ahura Mazda then said, okay, I'm going to create the perfect man and the perfect bull. So the only way to describe this is I'm sorry, this is the only word, it's like a pinata. So you have this ideal man, and in this ideal man are the seeds of humanity. In the ideal bull are the seeds of animal and in some cases plant life. Got it? And so what happens is that you have these kind of there, and Agro Manu or Achamen, he cannot resist. And so he breaks the bowl. And out comes the seeds of animals and plants. And so what he does is he makes, for the plants, he makes for every good plant, he makes an evil plant. For every good animal, he makes an evil animal. Got it? Okay. So obviously the evil plants, a lot of these are poisonous, right? The evil animals are, kill people, poisonous as well. Then what happens is like, yeah, the ideal man. He breaks that, and here comes the seeds of humanity. And guess what? It's in the image of Ahura Mazda. He can't copy it. He tries, but it's too much of the essence of Ahura Mazda in it. And he's like, oh no. And, so in a sense, this would be a defeat. But he's like, there's another way of doing it. And so the idea would be this, is that maybe they're the image of Ahura Mazda, but what I can do is I can win them over, win their souls over to my side. So, so what happens is when you're born, you have a lower, you have your regular soul and you have an oversoul. And when you live your life, your oversoul watches you, keeps a tally if you're naughty or nice, and when you die, they're united again, and then your oversoul tattles whether you've been more good or more bad in life. If you've been more bad, you're going to be Ahriman's. You're going to be you're with Ahriman. You made your choice, so he finally gets you. If you have been good, then Uhura Mazda gets you. So what happens is that when they're united, you cross the Chinvat Bridge. And if you've been good, the bridge is strong and it's mighty, and you go to the House of Song, and you're all happy. If you've been bad, the bridge twists and turns, and you fall. And you go into the house of lies, of shame, of pain, where's fire and brimstone and gnashing of teeth and bad food. And then what happens is that after a period of time, they're released from each because Sarosant, a savior, comes about who will raise them from the dead, and there'll be this great battle between the forces of light and the forces of darkness. And the end, the forces of light win. They join the Yazati, which are the angels. The bad side joins the demons. It's a battle between Ahura Mazda and Agramanyu. And then in the end, there's a great throne judgment. Everybody's pushed in the lake of fire. If you've been good, you're solid and you will live forever because you won't burn. And if you're bad, you burn, and that's it. Anyway, so that is Zoroastrianism. So you do have these different kinds of stories. There you have it. Somebody says little shop of horrors, right? Yeah. Let's go to ancient India, right? So in ancient India, the origins of the world are found or discussed in the Vedas. So we find this early on. According to the Indo-Europeans, regardless of where they migrated to, the world was actually created as a result of the dismembered body of a primordial victim that was sacrificed. Furthermore, Indo European priests believed that each time they performed a sacrifice, they repeated this process. The earth then was related directly with the flesh, the body of the first sacrifice. So this goes back to this concept of a primordial sacrifice. So there you have that. Um, so let's go there. Let's take a look. The next image, the Song of Man, known as the Purusha Shakti in the Rig Veda, dating pretty far between 1500 to 900 BCE. It's a very definitive Indo-European text. It states as follows. This is, of course, this is image of Purusha, this first sacrifice. When they divided Purusha, or man, how many pieces did they prepare? The moon was born of his mind. Of his eyes, the sun was born. From his mouth, Indra and fire. From his breath, wind was born. From his navel, there was the atmosphere. From his head, heaven was rolled together. From his feet, the earth. From his ear, the cardinal points. Thus the gods caused the worlds to be created. Seven mouthed were the sacrificial enclosures. Thrice 7 bundles of wood were made. When the gods performing sacrifice bound Purusha, man, as the sacrificial animal. And so you see, it's like this gigantic prototype human like sacrifice that's divided in different parts. And through that sacrifice, the different parts of the world come about. As you can observe here, there is this moving from a microcosm of body parts to the macrocosm of the universe. But just as the body of the primordial victim was sacrificed to create the universe out of its parts, the reverse was also required. That victims must continually offer to keep this universe alive. This is again, life feeds upon life. Sacrifice must always be made. The Ateria Brahmana provides an important glimpse into this process. Let's go to the next image, as it describes how to perform an animal sacrifice and what it truly means. It says, cause its eye to go to the sun, send forth its breath to the wind, its life force to the atmosphere, its ear to the cardinal points, its flesh to the earth. These words were accompanied with instructions on exactly what hand gestures one should make during the sacrifice. The animal sacrifice here follows closely the sacrificial hymns in the Rig Veda. While the primordial man's eye becomes the sun, here the animal victim's eye also, did you note, becomes the sun. Both the ear, the primordial man, and the sacrificial animal become the cardinal points. And if that were not enough of a parallel, the breath of the primordial man and the animal victim become the wind. From sacrifice, the universe was created, but also, as I said, through sacrifice, the universe is maintained, it's preserved. In other words, it needs to be constantly fed to stay alive and effective. The Indo Europeans and many others observe that life feeds upon life. We talked about this, and this is where this idea comes from. Next image. Yet, one more, yet, according to the Rig Veda, even with the formation of humanity, there is an inherent caste system. For concerning Purusha, the Rig Veda declares, when they divided the primeval man, into how many parts did they divide him? What was his mouth? What were his arms? What were his thighs and feet called? The Brahmin, this is the priestly caste, you see priests and teachers, was his mouth. Of his arms, you see the Kshatriyas, warriors and rulers on the left. Of his arms was made the warrior. His thighs became the Vishya or Vishaya. These are the farmers, traders, and merchants. Of his feet, the Shudra were born, and these are the laborers. So here you have this, and of course, down below, you have the deletes, the outcasts, street cleaners, sweepers, latrine. And so these are outcasts, as you can see here. Here, the Brahmin, who are the priests within the cosmic body of Purusha, represent the head, and the mouth are understood as the offering fire. And the tripart division of the universe symbolizes heaven. Next, the Kshatriya, who are the warriors, represent the arms, are understood as a defensive fire, and then the tripart division of the universe symbolizes mid-space. Third, the Vishya or Vishaya, who are the merchants, artisans, and producers, represent the thighs and the genitals, are understood as the cooking fire, and the tripartite division of the universe symbolizes the earth. The last class, the Sudras, are the servants, and in the Vedas do not even merit a designation of the sacrificial fire or the tripartite division of the universe. The Shudras were, for the most part, the earlier inhabitants of the Indian subcontinent and were largely non-Aryan, mostly Dravidians and Mundas, and so considered unworthy of consideration. This would change, of course, but not in the Brahmanic age. Um, we also have, next image, we also have this interesting thing where the Indo-Europeans are spreading from the Caucasus Mountains around 5000 BCE. And you see here, I want you to track this because the creator gods, the creator sky god, the name kind of travels with it. So you see here Daius Pitter, which means sky father. Of course, Daius or Deus means sky. That's where we get like the words like today, yesterday. Pitter means father. Pitter, pater, vater, father, right? So what happens is you see that as the Indo-Europeans migrate from the Caucasus Mountains, when they go towards Greece, you could see here on this particular chart, we have moving to Zeus Pater and eventually Zeus Pater, right? Zeus. You see, when it comes to the Latins, Jus Pater becomes Jupiter for the Latins, right? But you see the derivatives all over the place, all across the Germanic realms. But take a look at India. So what will happen is it crosses over, and you have Daius Pitter. So the Indo-European influence, and this has everything to do with the creation story. Next image. So let's take a look at Daius Pitter. During the Vedic age, it was believed that the sky god Dyaus Pitar mated with the earth goddess Prithvi in order to create the world. Next image, we'll go to Prithvi. There she is. Yet both Dyaus Pitar and Mata Prithvi were understood as being called the Daivi Prithvi because they're combined together. Sometimes Dyaus Pitar is depicted as a red bull, and other times as a black steed covered in pearls, these pearls representing the stars of the sky. His bellowing sounded much like thunder. Together, Dyaus Pitar and Mata Prithvi conceived the goddess of the dawn, Ushash, and the goddess of the night, Ratri. The sky god and earth goddess also conceived the great god Indra. And so we're seeing, next image, so we're seeing again the same emanations that you saw coming from there's Indra. Now, what happens is as the world's being created, according to the Rig Veda, in an address to Indra, thy father Dyaus esteemed himself as a hero. Most notable was the work of Indra's maker, his who begot the strong bolt's Lord, who roareth immovable like the earth from her foundation. But what happens here is that Dyaus thinks, hey, what could possibly go wrong? But Indra is much, so Dyaus is much like Uranus, and Indra is much like Kronos. And so what happens is that Indra grows weary of his father's authority, and he grabs him by the foot and pulls him out of the sky where he fell on to his death. And so now Indra becomes the top god and has his own pantheon. Much like you saw with Uranus, he falls and Kronos now becomes in charge with his gods when you have the Titans. What's interesting is Indra will in turn fall too. He'll still be important, but he'll fall to the next gods, and those would be, of course, Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva. Next image. Well, what is this? Well, we have a very different myth in the ancient Artha Veda, often known as the Book of Magic, and it preserves a very early Indian creation myth dated to between 1000 to 700 BCE. And so let's go through this. We'll look at me for a little bit. So what happens here is as follows. So hymn 10:7 of the text, this text refers to a common thread that was running throughout all of existence within both manifest and non-manifest forms, which connected all things together. A very overt reference to pantheistic elements in the Vedas. The primary source, here we go, the primary source of existence was once united and simple in form, and it's called the Hiranyagarbha. The Hiranyagarbha means the golden womb from which the universe was formed. Hiranyagarbha. But at a certain time, the heat, in Sanskrit, they call that tapa, begins to build up to the point where suddenly there is an explosion. In Sanskrit, that is skamba. So you have this small point, it builds, and suddenly it explodes. Bang, right? And so what happens is that skamba pours out of the cosmological womb, moving like waves of water. And so simple things become more and more complex in form, spreading much like the branches emerging from a single tree. The gods become the branches, and they in turn continue this creation. And then there's these tiny little particles in Sanskrit known as pamsu, and these tiny little particles slowly come together and they form stones, which form rocks and eventually accumulate to form the earth. So what happens is simple things become more complex as they're building together. It does kind of sound a little bit like a Big Bang, but who knows, right? I mean, this is only a theory they came up with, 3,000 years ago. Next image. So another, by the time of Hinduism, Brahma becomes the great creator god. In one version of the creation myth, Brahma experiences the need to create, to form the cosmos, and as he meditates, he divides into two, much like a cell, with one half male and the other half female. The female half being the goddess Sarasvati. His male half proceeds to fall in love with his female side and copulates with her, creating Manu, who then creates the world. So, in a sense, all things begun with a with this primordial divine androgyny, with both male and female aspects united as one. But ignite creation, he must divide in order to replicate. Right. Manu, next image, of course, was considered not only as a creator of humanity, but as the very first king to preside over this world. Known for his virtuous life and wisdom, he is accorded with saving humanity through a warning that comes from a fish that he saved. Here he is told to build an ark, save his family and the animals. During the flood, Vishnu appears as a fish, and Shiva appears as a rope, next image. And with the divine rope, tied between the divine fish and Manu's ark, he was pulled to safety as the world was covered with water. Of course, we see such flood stories in ancient Israelite traditions, Noah's Ark, Sumerian, Babylonian legends, Utnapishtim and the Ark, even Greco-Roman beliefs, Deucalion and the Ark. So, it seems to be a very creative arc of stories there. So there you have it. The next image. It goes into another version of the creation story of Brahma, offers more details about his association with the goddess Sarasvati. This is Sarasvati, believe it or not, who and basically Sarasvati is understood as also the goddess that's known as Vash. Okay, let's look at me for a little bit. Thank you so much. So what happens is this: so Sarasvati is also Vash. Vash in Sanskrit means speech or the voice or the word. That's Vash. So that which is spoken is able to create through the speech. It sounds much like we heard about Ta, right? In the Egyptian myth. It also sounds much like we see in Judeo Christian as well as Islamic traditions when it comes to God. Even scholars never dispute the fact that Sarasvati was associated with speech early on in her development. But just how this relation developed at first is still a matter of great discussion. But we also, so she is the one who creates through speech. Cool stuff, right? Let's go to the next image. And this is Hesiod. We're to the Greeks. Wow. This is easy. Oh, man. Okay. So the Greek outline a rather complex origin story. This is the origin story. Are you guys seeing lots of deities here? So, according to Hesiod, in the beginning there was chaos. Yeah, we heard the beginning. We heard this in other traditions. You're starting to see. This is the fun part about this talk: is you wait long enough, you start to see some scary overlaps, and they keep occurring. After a while, you're going to start getting scared. But we're not there yet. We're getting there. So, in the beginning there was chaos, with the universe formless and void. It sounds a lot like, of course, again, we see this in Sumerian and Babylonian stories. The word chaos itself can be translated as meaning the abyss and was the primordial state of creation, or I should say before creation. From out of chaos arose the wide bosomed goddess Gaia, who ordered part of the chaos to create a safe abode for her intended offspring. Next, Tartarus began to organize the depths of the earth. Eros was the fourth primordial god to come after chaos, Gaia, and Tartarus. As the god personifying sexual love, Eros had within him the power of desire that could lead to sexual unions between males and females. Meanwhile, Gaia produced from out of herself, asexually, a mate that would be her equal and sent him aloft above her. And so Uranus came about, the god of the sky or of heaven, since this is what the name Uranus means. Yes, I know, again, those who know me know my pet peeve here. So what happens is, I know we say the planet of Uranus. That's not how you're supposed to say it. It's not Uranus. It is Uranus. And Uranus in Greek means heaven. The word Uranus means heaven. Now, the Germans had a little close. They got an umlaut over that, so you get the U sound right there. So Uranus is the god of the heavens, the sky. Now, with the power of Eros, Gaia was able to mate with Uranus, giving birth to the 12 Titans: Oceanus, Coeus, Creos, Hyperion, Ipetus, Thea, Rhea, Themis, Menome, Phoebe, Tethys, and of course, Kronos, as well as the three Cyclops and the three hectoncheers. Unlike Uranus, Gaia also produced out of herself Aurea, the god of mountains, and Pontus, the god of the seas. So we have that. Let's take a look here at the next image. So here are the Titans. You see Oceanus there, Hyperion, Thea, Coeus, Phoebe, Cryos, right? Next image. Here comes the Titans. And then, of course, there's Nome Sin is, of course, goddess of memory, Themis, Iaptis, Rheas. And here's Kronos, who is the youngest. But what happens here is now Uranus viewed three of his sons, known as the hectoncheers, as hideous monsters. In short, the three were Berarius, next image, who is known as the vigorous, also sometimes called the sea goat. The next one is Cotus, next image, the striker, and or also known as the furious, and Gyges, the next one, known as the big limbed. And so, yeah, they're not they're not too handsome, but there you have it. Let's take a look at me. Thank you. So what happens is these three may have represented the chaotic forces of nature that causes earthquakes and tidal waves. In some versions of the myth, the hectoncheers were so ugly. How ugly were they? That Uranus actually attempted to push them back into Gaia's womb when he sees them emerging. While Gaia pleaded with Uranus to accept her three sons, he instead cast them into the depths of Tartarus. Bent upon revenge, Gaia pleaded with their other sons and daughters to punish Uranus for this unholy act. But the only god brave enough to take up the challenge was Kronos, who acted swiftly, castrating his father with a sickle given to him from his mother. Uranus's blood from his castration fell upon the earth and was transformed into the Furies, who were the chthonic goddesses of vengeance, the giants, the Melai, who were the more mild nymphs of the Astries. Meanwhile, his testicles fell into the sea, creating foam, and from this foam, Aphrodite, the goddess of love, was born. Now, I guess we'll take a look at Aphrodite, the goddess of love. There she is. Now, free of Uranus, Gaia decides to get remarried, choosing Pontus, the god of the sea, as her new husband. Together, they produce the sea nymphs and other hybrid creatures. And so, but then what happens? Next image. Now, the gods known as the Titans were in charge of the world, with Kronos becoming their king. Unfortunately, his mother Gaia told Kronos that it was prophesied that he was to be overthrown by his own children. To prevent this from happening, as his consort Rhea was giving birth to the Olympians, Kronos began swallowing each and every one of them. Fearing of losing all of her children, Rhea begged both Gaia and Uranus to preserve at least one of her offspring. And I'm going, is Uranus still around? Hearing their daughter's appeal, Gaia and Uranus immediately sent Rhea to give birth to her last child, Zeus, while hidden away in a deep cave, next image, beneath Mount Ida on the island of the Aegean Sea, next image. Those known as the Curites, protective spirits in the form of armored youths, kept watch over the infant Zeus, making noise with their weapons and shields so as to drown out the sound of the baby crying. Meanwhile, Rhea went up to Kronos, holding the stone wrapped in swaddling clothes. Mistaking the stone as the infant Zeus, which of course was part of the plan, Kronos instantly swallowed the stone. This was the famous Omphalos stone, where, according to another Greek myth, Zeus later sent out two eagles to seek the very center of the world. And when they found this spot to be Delphi, he positioned here the Omphalos stone, which translated as meaning navel. So the Oracle of Delphi was considered the very navel of the earth. So there you have that. So interesting stories, right? Um, now we'll take this down temporarily. Of course, there are different versions of how he was raised, but eventually, and we'll get there. But we'll move on to another story. Let's move on to the Prometheus story. With Prometheus, this is a rather interesting story. In various myths, it was not Zeus, but Prometheus who created man. In some versions, Prometheus created man at the beginning of the current Iron Age, and by other accounts, he created man at the beginning of the another Bronze Age. Now Prometheus was the Titan god of forethought and was entrusted by Zeus to create mankind. I'm saying the word mankind intentionally. You'll see why in a little bit. Fashioning him out of clay. When the clay of man was ready, Zeus had Athena, the goddess of wisdom, breathe life into him. But Zeus only wanted men to worship him and did not want him to have any other advantages. Prometheus thought this was wrong. The first conflict between Zeus and Prometheus was over how sacrificial animals were to be cut and exactly what God should receive as opposed to men. Prometheus wanted humanity to have the best meat, but he knew the gods would demand the best meat for themselves. So what he did was sacrifice a great ox and then wrap the best meat in the thin skins while he wrapped the bones within the most appetizing rich white fat and asked Zeus which one he wanted from here on. Zeus instantly chose the bone craftily disguised in the rich fat for the gods, and so cheated him and all the other gods hereafter on the best portion of the meat. For once a god makes an oath, it cannot be broken. Realizing Prometheus had deceived him, Zeus withheld his fire from man so that the meat to be eaten by men was raw and inedible. So let's go to the next image. So Prometheus defied Zeus again by stealing his fire, hiding inside a fennel stick, right? And so gave fire to mankind to cook their meat. Zeus was so angry with Prometheus that he was cast out of heaven and bound to a stake on Mount Caucasus, next image, condemned to have an eagle perpetually eat upon his ever regenerating liver or heart so, well, so that he would suffer unrelieved agony. It was not until the time of Hercules that Zeus decided to release Prometheus from his fate for helping mankind, having his son Hercules rescue him, and of course, killing the eagle. So you have these various stories. Let's go to the next image. As for Zeus's punishment for man, listening to Prometheus and so disobeying him by accepting both the meat and the fire, he decided this is so messed up. It's so ridiculous. He decided to conceive the ultimate foil. He created female kind. More specifically, Zeus ordered the forging god Hephaestus to fashion Pandora out of the mixture of earth and water. She was to appear as a modest maiden wearing the silvery garments of Athena, graced with a golden crown and garlands of flowers. Yet she was also to be as beautiful as a goddess and completely irresistible to men, with Athena teaching her the art of sexual enticement. Then Hermes placed deep within her a heart prone to curiosity and deceit, with a desire to tell lies in such a way as to confound and fool men. Hermes also added a cruel streak so that men may suffer all the more. Because Prometheus was tied up at the moment, Zeus gave the foil of womankind to his Prometheus's brother Epithemius, whose name means afterthought, in contrast to his brother's name that means forethought. Epithemius presented mankind with Pandora, and they eagerly accepted her. Yet Zeus also sent with Pandora a box and instructed her never ever to open it. Curiosity got the best of her, and she did indeed open the box with all the vices of humanity released. However, Zeus allowed for hope to remain at the very bottom of the box, for if there was no hope, there would be no reason for humanity to want to continue. And you're thinking to yourself, wow, okay, uh, this is a pretty messed up myth. It is indeed. Let's look at me for a split second. This is the Greek and Roman myth of the foundation of humanity. This is a very popular one with Pandora and Pandora's box. I want to say something. Did you guys know that within the Judeo-Christian tradition, uh, when you talk to early Jewish perspectives, it was Adam that was the problem, not Eve, because Eve ate, partook without the knowledge, but Adam partook because he had knowledge. It's interesting because this carried on for a long time, but it was an integration. So, what will happen is as we get into the Greco Roman age, what will happen is Eve will be recast as a Pandora kind of figure. And that's what that blending of traditions is what really changes the stories of Eve into what we get later on in medieval Europe. Because you can see right here the creation story for women when it comes to the book of Genesis is not a negative one, But what will happen is this negative overlay occurs when it comes to the Greco. So it's the Greeks and Romans that do this. It's pretty upsetting. Well, next image. But we have more story to show you. So as this age progressed, humanity proceeded to become progressively more wicked. For instance, Lycon, the king of Arcadia, sacrificed a boy to Zeus, an act that was now forbidden during the age of Zeus. For his crime, Zeus turned Lycon into a wolf. Zeus decided to destroy all humanity via a great flood. But not all were to be destroyed, for there was a righteous man by the name of Deucalion who was to be saved from this watery fate. He was not actually he's not actually full because for Prometheus was his father. In some versions of the story, Zeus told Deucalion to build an ark to save himself, his wife Phaera, and their daughter, as well as Epithemius. And others, there are pairs of humans. So what happens is there's a great flood. And after 9 days, the ark lands on the mountain peak, variously identified as Mount Orthes or Mount Parnassus or Mount Etna or whatever. Deucalion and Phaera then, after the flood, offer sincere thanks to Zeus for saving them. And then they consulted an oracle of Themis concerning how humanity was to spread over the earth once again. Deucalion was instructed to cover your head and throw the bones of your mother behind your shoulder. Understanding that their mother was ultimately Gaia, Mother Earth herself, Deucalion interpreted the bones mentioned in the oracle as the rocks from the earth. So Deucalion and Phaera threw these rocks over their shoulders. The stones thrown by Phaera over her shoulder became women, while the stones thrown by Deucalion then became the men. And so this is how that works. Next, after that, you have next image. You have the ages of humanity. And so you have, in a sense, we go through these various periods of time. The golden age, where humans are righteous before the gods, doing, and they're true, and they live to be over the age of 100, and when they die, they become divine spirits. Then you have the Silver Age, and during the Silver Age, as the Golden Age is a time of justice, of righteousness before the gods. When we reach the Silver Age, this is a time of hubris. This is a time of, hey, we can do it ourselves, and the gods just let us do it. And so this is a time of conflict. This is a time of war. Is a bloody time. The next period of time is the Bronze Age. This is again the continual. This is they call this the age uh, of delusion, of twisted justice, of ate. And then you have the age of the heroes, what we see in the Iliad and the Odyssey. And what follows after that is the Iron Age, which is the age of justice. We are judged accordingly by our deeds. And hopefully, we'll look back to the age of heroes and realize those models. And by realizing those models, we in turn can be saved. Next image. Well, and then you have the Orphic mysteries, the Orphic tradition. So let's go over this Orphic tradition right here. So those active within the Orphic tradition were fond of theogonies. And what is also clear is that they enjoyed embellishing these stories of the gods with even stronger elements, filled with abstract speculations interwoven throughout with mystical nuances and connotations. Of all these tales, the myth of Dionysus Zagreus is the most important for deciphering Orphism. Walter Burkert summarizes the myth as follows. He says, Zeus raped his mother, Rhea Demeter, and sire Persephone. Then he raped Persephone in the form of a snake and sire Dionysus. To the child Dionysus, he handed over rule of the world, placing him on a throne, and has him guarded by the Corybantes. But Hera sends the Titans who distract the child with toys, and while the child is looking into a mirror, he is dragged from the throne, killed, and torn to pieces, then boiled, roasted, and eaten by the giants. Zeus thereupon hurls his thunderbolt to burn the Titans, these monstrous material creatures, and from the rising soot there sprung an interesting bit. And what will happen is as follows. Let's look at me for a split second here. So what happens is as follows. So they ate Dionysus, and so Dionysus is the pure spirit of Zeus, and of course the Titans, they're material, right? They're materialistic, they're dark, they're evil. And so what happens is that from the ashes, Zeus puts the Dionysian particles, leftovers, and with the Titanic ash, he puts it together and forms humanity. And so, as a result, in the Orphic mysteries, therefore, we have two aspects. We have a Titanic flesh, which is evil, and we have a Dionysian spirit, which is good. And so we have this inner conflict within ourselves, right? And so we have to always, so the evil soma, or the body, is considered the tomb or the sema of the soul. And so the followers of Orpheus gave this name, especially to the body, because the soul is punished for that which is punished, and seems to have this covering, this likeness of a prison, in order that it may be kept in custody until it has paid its due debt. The correlation of Orphism to Christianity with its duality between spirit and flesh, inward and divinely inspired goodness with the person in opposition to the inward evil nature stemming from wicked things. Uh, uh, you can see the parallels here. The next image, which will show it briefly, is Anaximander, a great philosopher. See him there he is. 611 to 547. He was born in Miletus and was one of the top students of Thales. And what happens here is while Thales believed water was the primary element of creation, Anaximander theorized that the material realm was produced via something less differentiated than water, and that the material aspect of the world always existed and could not be destroyed. So we're seeing another idea here that still the world always existed. Yet he argued that this basic element was indefinable, called aprion, having always been in existence and constantly sifting through its opposites within itself, that which is moist from that which is dry, and that which is cold from that which is hot. The result is a plurality of worlds. When these opposing elements do encounter itself, decay sits in, and eventually they return to the definitive endless realm. As for the creation of humanity, Anaximander did believe that all life on Earth originated from moisture and that the primary source was the ocean. Humanity originated, he says, from the fish of the sea that evolved to the point of crawling upon the earth and then continued to adapt to his environment. Does this sound familiar at all? 611 to 547 BCE, Anaximander. Hence, humanity gained his current physical appearance and achieved this current advanced mental state through their adaptation to the environment, a belief, of course, Charles Darwin later embraced. One of his students, Anaximander, was Xenophon of Colophon, noted in history as the first person to examine fossils, and then realizing that much of the earth was covered by water at one point. From this, he deduced that life and even the earth itself had come from the oceans. So, literally, now, through observation. Next image. Empedocles. I'm running out of water. Empedocles of Sicilian Acros, 490 to 430 BCE, theorized that the defining construction blocks of the cosmos were the four elements: earth, air, fire, water. When these elements were stirred by the forces he called love and strife, um, in essence, attraction and repulsion, the universe begins to form. The earth then gave life, but these first creatures had dismembered organs that only later evolved to be integrated into the rest of the life forms. So, if earth, air, and fire, water. Next image. Then you have the Gnostic ideas, right? And so when we get to the Gnostic ideas, I'll just go ahead and give a little summary here. So in Gnosticism, so basically you have the Platonic idea in Platonism. In the beginning, in Platonism, you have that which is one, which is the monad, right? The one, the monad, and it emanates like the rays of the sun, the pleroma. So emanates the pleroma, and from this, these are the ideals or the forms. From here, you have emerging the craftsman known as the demiurge, and the demiurge then creates the universe. Well, what will happen is the Gnostics will take these ideas, we'll take this idea, and what will happen has, is that you have the monad, which is one, and you have the pleroma, which is the emanations going from, and so the monad is light, it's good, it's perfection, it's life, It's all these wonderful things. As things emanate out, it becomes less light, less perfection, and these are known as the aeons. But as you go further and further out, it becomes less close to perfection, less light, less goodness, less beauty. And so at the very edge, in many Gnostic myths, you have Sophia, which is wisdom. And Sophia is at the very outer section, the Tatooine, the edge of the galaxy of the Pleroma. And so what happens is Sophia has a desire to understand the monad, which is perfection. As she tries to comprehend the monad, as she's trying to move up, what will happen is this negative energy or even this hubris of trying to understand when she is more limited than the oneness and the beauty of the monad, which is like the sun, and she's just like an emanation rays. What happens is negativity makes her pregnant, and she gives birth to the material world. She gives birth to the material world, which is negative. And the material world, uh, uh, there's a maker. There's this demiurge. There is this lower Yaldabaoth, who is mostly he's matter, but he still has the seeds of wisdom of Sophia in him. And so what he does, he's the creator God, and he's creating everything, and everything is matter is mixed with the seeds of light, but it's all mixed in. And so what a Gnostic does is recognize that you have within your material body, you have this light that is your spirit, which is the only thing that's truth. You deny the material world, you deny the flesh, and then you rise back up again. So this is part of the Gnostic story of creation. Next image. And then we're off to Japan. Well, in Japan, according to ancient Japanese beliefs, chaos reigned in the beginning. Hey, is this sounding familiar? With the heavens and the earth not yet separated, the multiplicity of gods and spirits dwelled in this realm, and the ancestors of the gods, Izanagi, and his wife and younger sister, Izanami, uh, are walking along the great bridge of heaven, which connects heaven and earth. Izanagi looks down upon the waters, dipping his great spear into it, and when he pulls it out, the spear drops clots of dirt into these waters, creating the islands of Japan. The oldest. So what happens is that so Japan is created. So this is part of that creation myth. Let's look at me for a little bit. So what happens though is that so Izanami, she keeps giving birth to these various gods and spirits. The Japanese is Shintoism, but the problem is that when she gives birth to the god of fire, it burns her and it kills her. And so Izanagi is so upset by this, he actually takes the god of fire and cuts him into lots of little pieces. He's so mad, and these become the volcanoes of Japan. Then he's pretty upset, and he tries to go into the underworld to see his wife, who he misses. And so he goes down into Yomi, which is a gloomy, shadowy place of the dead. But the problem is, if you have the tiniest morsel of food, you'll be there for all eternity. And this does remind me of the Persephone myth, right? If you take the food, you'll be there forever. And the problem is Izanami did take, and she starts to deteriorate, and she starts to become pretty gruesome looking. And he sees her, and he's pretty freaked out, right? And so he flees out, he runs away, he blocks the entrance to the underworld, and then what he does is he cleanses himself. He washes himself off, and this cleansing enables him to give birth to things. And so, accordingly, from Izunagi's left eye emerged Amaterasu, who is the sun goddess. From his right eye, arises Tsukuyomi, excuse me, who is the moon god, and from his nose, Sasanu, who's the storm god. So Amaterasu uh, was such a bright and radiant child that her parents, or just Izanagi, sent her, basically, she was put up to the top rise of heaven. But Sasanu, who's the god of storms and winds and even snakes, he's chaotic, he's clever, he's mischievous, he's destructive, often ravaging Japan with his fury. He causes so much noise and so much trouble that Amaterasu flees. And she flees into a cave to get away from all his noise of his rampage. What is it with noisy deities? But when she blocked the mouth of the cave with a mighty boulder, the entire world was suddenly deprived of her light, allowing demons to rise unhindered from the dark realm, to claim the surface as their own. To make matters worse, all the crops began to die. The gods tried everything to get her out with little luck. And so they called Uzumi, who's the goddess of joy and happiness and good health. And she did a whirling kind of dance. It's kind of silly. It's kind of naughty. And the gods began to laugh. And so what happens is that she peeks out, and then and she sees a mirror hanging from a tree, and they grab her and they have her. And of course, as a result, of course, she starts the lineage of the emperors, and of course, humanity is created right after all that. So that's kind of their story. Let's go next image, and then I want to show you something that you probably didn't expect. There we go. There's Amaterasu. Next image, and now we go into Korean cosmologies, and this gets a little interesting. I mean, it does. According to some of the most prominent ancient Korean cosmologies, by the way, my source for this is they had a symposium at Claremont Graduate University. This is, on a doctrinal level. And they were going through and deciphering Korean stories of the beginning of the universe. And I found this one very interesting. So the beginning of the world. Okay, so according to some of the most prominent ancient Korean cosmologies, in the beginning, the world did not exist at all. There wasn't this cycle of worlds continually born and destroyed that we see in many Eastern religions. Here in this void, however, there does exist a sun, and there are two deities, a primordial pair who enter into the picture, one both male and female, and so an androgyny known as Yul Yul, and one female known as Mago, who is pictured here. In music, Yul means male tone music, and Yo, female tone music, and it is the combined musical tones that create the universe when encountering the impulse and orchestration of Mago. And so, what will happen in this case, the universe begins not with a big bang, but in many ways, it is like a cosmic music that reaches its climax. And then the universe, through its sound, is created. So we're seeing a lot of East Asia. Creation is through music, song, as opposed, and we see this also with the indigenous peoples of the Americas. We see the beginning of the universe connected to songs, connected to music. Now, when the androgynous deity Yo-Yil died, Mago became pregnant with twin goddesses, Gungi and Sohi. This complete act of self procreation is intended to reveal that What she brings forth arise from her and her alone. And her two daughters are really part of herself. So Gungi, meaning vault woman, related to the heavens, and Soyi, meaning nest woman, refer to the world below it. In fact, various Korean legends assert that the three are a type of primordial triune divinity, and together as three in one create and manage life, resulting in the heavenly springs which can nurture this life. These twin goddesses, in turn, each give birth to a pair of male and female gods. The male gods called the men of heaven, and the female goddesses known as the women of heaven. With the next image, with the so here we go. So um, with the appearance of the men and women of heaven, Yo-Yil, the male female deity of the primordial pair, is restored to life, and this androgynous body becomes the material that is now transformed into the heavens, the earth, the oceans, and even the four elements. Those elements being earth, fire, water, and ki, which means soul. When these elements mix, other elements are formed, becoming plants, herbs, birds, and animals. Because her partner, Yul was now directly part of the world, the goddess Mago chooses to stay with him, her, and the men and women of heaven, and they rule all things under her guidance from their heavenly fortress, which was named Mago Suung in honor of Mago. Next image. Here we go. So each of the four gates located at the four corners of the heavenly city represent the four cardinal directions, were guarded by one of the men of heaven. Two of these heavenly men were the sons of Gunji, while the two others were the sons of Suhi. These four heavenly men would marry the four heavenly women, and together they would give birth to 12 children, the ancestors of humans. Are you seeing some? This is Korea. We're looking at Korea here, and you're seeing similarities here with other cosmologies, aren't you? You're like going, okay, Dr. Eva, now I'm starting to have some epiphanies. There's a lot of similarities, and the pairings too. Whoa, what is going on? Yet they were a perfect race of humanity, living in the realm between heaven and earth, spirit, material, and having special powers. For instance, they could speak without making a sound. In other words, communicate via, I guess, telepathy, right? Yet the what is most curious is this human race could not see. They could not see, but they could hear the heavens of which they were intimately a part. Thus, sound, or better said, the music of the heavenly realm, gave them all the knowledge they needed to survive and to be totally satisfied. This perfect humanity sustained themselves in their purity through the drinking from a spring that was located at the center of the city. This living water that kept them going was known as Earth's milk, or GU, which is open at all. The men and women of heaven only drank from the spring to survive, and nothing else was needed. Now, look at me for a little bit here. So, to grasp this Korean cosmology further, the idea of heaven and in turn those who occupy it is a little more complicated and worthy a bit more investigation. This is it kind of it's a concept of time, but it does not exist in separation from space. So time is space bound and vice versa. And so it's kind of like out a little outside of time. I know. Yet after 10,000 years, this great race of humanity became too numerous in the city of Magosung, and the earth's milk would not support them all. One man of the city decided to sacrifice some of his portion of Earth's milk for others. Although other legends assert that his act was not out of kindness, but out of impatience, since the line to drink from the milk was getting way too long. After skipping about 5 meals, This man named Jizo from the line of Bako began to grow so hungry that he began to despair of life itself. Soon, Jizo decided he could not take this suffering any longer, and he decided to commit suicide. Heading for the nearest cliff, Jizo was about to jump over the side when he happened to see a cluster of grapes growing over the edge. With his hunger overcoming his sensibility, Jesus grabbed and pulled the grapes off the vine and began to stuff himself with this foreign material food that was so unlike earth's milk from this heavenly city. Immediately, he gained the sense of taste, acquiring ability to taste that which is sour, bitter, spicy, sweet, and salty. This encounter with the grapes at the side of the cliff and the resulting sensation is known as the incident of the five tastes, which, by the way, connects to Korean cuisine. But anyway, with his new knowledge of material sensation, he gained the sense of taste. He returns to the heavenly city and tells them all that he did not have to depend upon the spring of earth's milk to survive, that there existed other ways to survive through other kinds of sustenance. The liquid milk of heavenly stuffed spirit could be replaced by the solid food of material stuff. Many joined Jizo, enjoying the taste of these grapes, but something began to happen to them. For the more they ate, the more they were able to see the material world around them and had knowledge of this realm. Yet conversely, the more they saw of this world with their physical eyes, the less they were able to hear the world of the heavens. Also, something physical was happening to them. They were becoming more and more material the more they ate. Their soft skin now became coarse and their bodies became heavier and heavier. Meanwhile, they were beginning to grow teeth so that they could better eat of this material solid food. They developed saliva, which was like venom, for it breaks down these foods. Through the eating of this fruit, the men and women of heaven were no longer pure, pure as they once had been when they partook of the heavenly spring. For now they had become solid, unclean, especially because they were sustaining themselves through eating and destroying other life. The act of consuming, of destroying other life, plant or animal, in order to live, carried a curse with it, resulting in the limitation of experiencing the heavenly realm, and the unfortunate magnification of experiencing and being part of the material realm of corruption. The corrupting fruit of knowledge soon led to a shorter lifespan, and their offspring began to resemble more animals than heavenly people. Are you seeing any kind of connection with any kinds of stories here, right? Now, of course, there was a struggle in the heavenly city, and all those who had consumed the fruit soon stood condemned and were cast out of heaven. And so Jesus and his followers stood condemned. Of course, there was some hope, for if they could get back into the city and drink again from earth's milk, they might again be restored to their former purity and hear heaven once more. So, returning to the heavenly city, they attacked and destroyed it. But during the resulting turmoil, the spring of earth's milk began to flood in all directions, losing its special powers and becoming material too. This was a time of great destruction. Now, those who had not eaten the grapes and had once lived in the heavenly city began to starve and suffer from the famine, and they had no choice but to eat the impure food to survive. While they began by eating the grapes, they soon moved on to eating all kinds of life like predators, beginning with plant life, but gradually moving on to consume even animal flesh, which was even greater offense than consuming plant life for their and so forth and so on. So this is the story. Well, yeah, we go down, right? Going downhill. Um, what's going to happen eventually, as you can imagine, is you're going to have a succession of generations that will follow. And I think it's interesting because at a certain point, um, uh, for instance, under Huang he sends out three clans in three different directions to populate the earth. Chenggung went to the east and established China. Baekso went west and started out to the people. In translation, this would mean Europe and the Middle East. And Heksu went south and went to what is translated as India. And so much like Shem, Ham, and Japheth, you have the dividing of the races to repopulate the earth. By the way, there's an attempt to go, to go back to meet Mago, which means a lot of self-denial and so forth and so on. But you get the idea. You learn a lot there, right? So, moving on. I didn't think I was going to get to these kind of legends. Next image. We'll show a picture of this beautiful realm, and then we'll move on to China. So next, yeah, there it is. Kind of beautiful there. Yeah, next image. Chinese creation myths are quite diverse. According to the Song of Tuki from the 4th century BCE, there was no primal cause for creation and no specific creator, for the world formed as a result of the elemental mists randomly coming together from what is described as the formless expanse. Eventually, these elements separated into binary oppositional forces. Next image, for instance, light and dark energies, upper and lower energies. Eventually, they are described as yin yang. The Taoist text known as the Tao Jing, also from around the 4th century BCE or before, also retains more of a vague sense of the origins of the universe, but does add a few more details. The work asserts there was something featureless yet complete, born before heaven and earth, silent, amorphous. It stood alone, unchanging. We may regard it as the mother of heaven and earth, not knowing its name. I style it as the Tao. Next, it states the Tao or the Way gave birth to unity. Unity gave birth to duality. Duality gave birth to Trinity. Trinity gave birth to the myriad of creatures. The myriad creatures bear yin on their back and embrace yang in their bosoms. They neutralize these vapors and thereby achieve harmony. So you have all these different ideas there. Next image. A second Taoist work from the 4th century called the Tao Yun states at the beginning of eternal past, all things penetrated and were identical with the great uh, vacuity, vacuous and identical with the one, rest at the one, eternally unsettled and confused. There was no distinction of dark and light. You're seeing a lot of chaos here. So once again, chaos will eventually become organized, as you can see. So next image. You can see right here how the great void where everything is one, and then you can see the yang and the yin, the masculine female principle, and they come together with the tai chi, the harmony, and you can see, well, it looks like the emanations. So that which is simple divides and becomes more complex. What is so interesting about this, and it's already dawning on you, is that all these other stories have that same idea. You start simple and it starts going through a multiplication of different things, each aspect connected to some concept of creation. We just keep It's the same story. We're in East Asia, and there's so many similarities that we saw around the Mediterranean. It is rather crazy when you really think about it. Um, Next image. According to another Chinese myth, the goddess Nuwa, seen here as a snake here, created humanity with Yin Shao as recorded in 195 CE. People say that when heaven and earth opened and unfolded, humankind did not yet exist. Nu Gao needed yellow earth and fashioned human beings. Though she worked feverishly, she did not have enough strength to finish her task, so she drew her cord in a furrow through the mud and lifted it out of it to make human beings. This is why rich aristocrats are the human beings made from yellow earth, while ordinary poor commoners are human beings made from the cord's furrow. Well, hence the rich are made out of yellow earth, while the poor are made out of mud, revealing a very strong sense of social stratification. based upon appearances and believed to be so by divine design. By the next image, by the ninth century CE, Nuwa uh, went from being a goddess to one of the first two human beings. We know from a work known as A Treatise on Extraordinary Things. Long ago, when the world first began, there were two people, Nukau and her older brother. They lived on Mount Kunlun, and there was not yet any ordinary people in the world. They talked about becoming husband and wife, but they felt ashamed. So the brother at once went with his sister up to Mount Kowloon and made this prayer: O heaven, if thou wouldst send us two forth as man and wife, then make all the misty vapor gather. If not, then make all the misty vapor disperse. At this, the misty vapor immediately gathered. When the sister became intimate with her brother, they plaited some grass to make a fan to screen their faces. Even today, when a man takes a wife, they hold a fan, which is a symbol of what happened long ago. So you have these rather interesting stories there, right? Next image, another Chinese story here is about the semi-divine Pangu. Accordingly, from a third century BCE source, heaven and earth were in chaos like a chicken's egg, and Panku was born in the middle of it. In 18,000 years, heaven and earth opened and unfolded. The limpid that was yang became the heavens. The turbid that was the yin became the earth. Panku lived within them, and in one day he went through 9 transformations, becoming more divine than heaven and wiser than earth. Each day the heavens rose 10 feet higher. Each day the earth grew 10 feet thicker. And each day Panku grew 10 feet taller. And so it was that in 18,000 years the heavens reached their fullest height, earth reached its lowest depth, and Panku became fully grown. Afterwards, there were 3 sovereign divinities. Numbers began with 1, were established with 3, perfected by 5, multiplied with 7, and fixed with 9. That is why heaven is 90,000 leagues from the earth. You got to love these 8. This is a 3rd century BCE source I just read. The Huayu Linian, also probably by Sun Zing, as the earlier one, provides more details about his transformation. When the firstborn, Panku, was approaching death, his body was transformed. His breath became the wind and clouds. His voice became peals of thunder. His left eye became the sun. His right eye became the moon. We see this a lot, by the way. We see this also with Shiva, left eye, right eye, sun, moon. We see this also in Egyptian mythology. So you're going to see this, so which I think is interesting when it comes to, for example, Horus too, sun and moon eyes. So it is curious. His 4 limbs and 5 extremities became the 4 cardinal points and the 5 peaks. His blood and semen became the waters and rivers. His muscles and veins became the earth's arteries. His flesh became fields and land. His hair and beard became the stars. His bodily hair became plants and trees. His teeth and bones became metal and rock. His vital marrow become pearls and jade. His sweat and bodily fluids become streaming rain. All the mites on his body were touched by the wind and were turned into the black-haired people. Done. So anyway, so you have that story, and there he is. So he, in a sense, like Purusha, right? His body becomes, in a sense, in death. It's not necessarily sacrifice, but in death, it becomes part of the world. Let's go to the next image. Yes, and then we have the Yoruba religion. Yes, and so what happens is that the Yoruba religion in southwestern Nigeria and parts of Benin and Togo on the west coast of Africa. Olorun is the first and primary god, the primordial Orisha, and the first to ascend upon the earth. For the Yoruba, the world is divided into 2 parts. You got the earth and the sky. Olorun and the other deities, known as the Orisha, and the ancestors dwell in the sky, while humanity and animals dwell on the earth, each realm connected to one another via ritual space. Olorun, whose name means owner of the sky, is all powerful and obviously the supreme being and creator of the cosmos. Olorun decided the fate of each individual person directly upon creation. And so the challenge is to learn what that fate is. Next image is another image of Olorun. Oh, actually, these are Orishas. So these are images from Orishas here. Olarin is also more remote than the other Orishas, and even though at times he is prayed to, more often the Orishas below him are approached via ritual action, for it is to them that Olorun has distributed many of his powers, and it is to them that the Yoruba dedicate shrines and sacred places, for no such dedication of space are made in Olorun's name. Next image. And so here, there's a good image of Olaroon. Let's see me for a little bit. So you have the Yoruba religion, right? And so with this, the Orishas are quite diverse in number and in focus, with some estimates as much as 400, with many worshipped in just only one village. So there you have it. You also have um, a spirit that's known as Isu, that is the great trickster. And so what happens is that uh, what he does, he's a great instigator of the Orisha, and he attempts to distract and tempt humanity through enticements and trials and tribulations. While he has no direct place in worship, he always kept in mind as being amongst all the cosmos, as a force pervading all places. He, in many ways, is a representation of chaos. So I find this rather interesting. Uh, Next image. And this right here, this is Arisanella. He's the sculptor of humans. So what happens is um, Olaroon, while he does make the first humans, Arisanella is the one who makes the rest of them. So he is the great sculptor of humanity. And he oftentimes is shown as wearing white robes. Next image, I believe, is Isu. Next image, Isu. Yeah. There you have it. The next image, is the Maasai. Okay, we got to tell you the Maasai. This is a great story. The Maasai. I just want to see you guys for this one. The Maasai, their creation story is the world of the sky and the world of the earth were once one, and the supreme god by the name of Nagai, sometimes known as Enkai, oversaw it all, and he owned all the cattle upon it. Now, this, of course, the Maasai, they live in Kenya and Tanzania today. And the guy created humanity from a single tree, splitting it into three parts. To the father of the tribe known as the Kamba, the guy gave a bow and arrow to hunt, and so they were to be hunters from the beginning of time. To the father of the Kikuyu, he gave a hoe for planting the fields, and so from the beginning of time, the Kikuyu were to be farmers. And to the father of the Maasai, he gave a stick for herding animals. And so they were destined to be taking care of all the cows. They are the pastoralists. One day, earth and sky were divided in two. The reasons vary, but one version of the story states that the forest dwellers were jealous of the Maasai because they were blessed with the responsibility of taking care of the world's cattle. And so they cut the rope connecting the earth with the sky in order to stop God from giving their rivals any more cattle. Well, who are the forest dwellers? I mean, I thought humanity is split into three different groups, which, by the way, we also heard about in Korea, but whatever. So, what's going on here, Dr. Rita? What's going on here? Who are these forest dwellers? Well, forest dwellers, what happens in ancient times in mythology is you have a problem, and that is when people live in communities and tribes and they're not allowed to go to other tribes to to marry, so they stay within the tribe, that's pretty great. But if it's a small tribe, after 50, 60, 70 years, people start looking kind of odd. So what happens is there has to be some new genetics thrown in for good measure. And so in ancient mythology, you're going to have the mirage people, you're going to have the forest dwellers, you're going to have jinn, you're going to have those who Cain goes off, and he kills Abel, goes off, and who does he go with? And so you have these kind of semi human or not, kind of other to vary things about. We see this also, by the way, with apes and chimpanzees. The females will go out and do things in order to change it, because otherwise, we will start looking rather funny. Anyway, so these forest dwellers cut that area, but apparently this plan backfired. So what happened is cattle required the grass from the earth to survive. Hence, the great god sent the rest of the cattle residing in the sky down to the Maasai, who he specifically had designated as pastoralists in the great scheme of things. These cows arrived via the roots of the fig tree, which is called the orati, and which is sacred, used in various rituals representing life. Because the guy himself had entrusted them with the important task of watching over sacred cattle, the Maasai believe any other occupation is unworthy of their attention, and they will sometimes help themselves out to other people's cattle by extension of their holy duties. The grass that fed the cattle is also held as sacred to Nagai. Often, grass is given as a sign of peace or blessing when one is held in their hand. Naturally, cattle too is sacred, part of the bond between the Nagai and the Maasai. And so they have a ritual remembering this creation story, and oftentimes is repeated, where they have the cow's meat and milk in these various tribal ceremonies. And so what happens is when they eat the meat and drink of the milk of the cow, is considered partaking in many ways of Nagai and taking care, taking a connection with his energy, with his covering over you. So they would have these celebrations during birth and circumcision and age ceremonies and marriage. So the cow must be ritually slaughtered in a respectful manner and blessed by the elders. But this is part of their beliefs, right? So there you have that. Next image. Okay, so what happens is Nagai. I want to bring up one more thing. Nagai is known as the Great Black God, and he's also known as the Great Red God. As the Black God, he is considered loving and kind, because what happened is there's much black soil, and that's fertile soil. As the Red God, he is considered angry. So you don't want to make him red. Black is good, red is bad. What happens also is that sometimes they refer to this God as the she to whom we pray. And so as a result, the guy is both male and female. But he is, or she is, the great creator deity. Next image. We also have, of course, other legends. According to the Nabeli, we have these tribes where we have um, the gods are father, son, and mother. There's some varieties that are found about the Nabili people of Zimbabwe. And in one version of the story, the creator father, by the name of Unkokulu, and the creator mother god, Mevlene, were once humans who emerged out of the swamps, and coming to dry land already discovered both cattle and grain were created upon the land. Here, after having children and starting humanity and growing old, they return to the earth, taking the form of snakes. And so this is that story. Next image. We also have, of course, the Mayans. The ideal reciprocity is between gods and humanity is rooted in Mayan culture. It depends so much upon ritual action. Creation itself is understood through the agricultural metaphors of planting, sowing, and sprouting. According to the Popol Vuh, this creation is a result of actually speaking out the story of the cosmic inception in enlightened words. Once again, we're back to enlightened words as being empowering and doing a ritual act of performance alongside these utterances. The sacred text. So what happens is, so you have to do it. Accordingly, in the beginning, the earth was formless and void, only defined as having four sides and four corners, with only calmness of the serene but lifeless waters pervading. There is not yet one person, one animal, bird, fish, crab, tree, rock, hollow, canyon, meadow, forest. Only sky alone is there. The face of the earth is not clear. Only the sea alone is pooled under all the sky. There is nothing whatever gathered together. It is at rest. Not a single thing stirs. Again, just to see me for a second. Again, this is are we? This is Mesoamerica. This is Mexico, Guatemala. This is this is Honduras. This is Belize. This is the Mayans. And once again, we're hearing the same kind of stories we've heard all around the world. It's starting to make a difference. You're starting to see it, right? The gods of the sky and the bears and begetters of the sea decide to work together to create life and are successful with plants and animals, but not in making humanity. After three failed attempts, the gods and the begetters try a fourth time, but with much more resolve. This time, the Popol Vuh tells the reader exactly why humanity was created. It was for reasons of reciprocity, of mutual exchange and dependence, which, by the way, we see in many other myths too. It must be tried again. The time for planting and dawning is near. For thus we must make a provider and nurturer. How else can we be invoked and remembered on the face of the earth? We have already made our first try at our work and design, but it turned out they didn't keep our days, nor did they glorify us. So now let's try to make a giver of praise, giver of respect, a provider and a nurturer. Back to the idea of providing, of feeding, of sacrificing to the gods, something that we see all around the world. We also, of course, the next image, we'll take a look at it. And that is the key to understanding the maize tree is found in the iconography of its branches. For while ears of corn are readily apparent, upon closer inspection, each grain of corn is oftentimes replaced by a human head. Two meanings are to be understood through this iconography. First of all, these human heads are the kernels of corn, referred to the Mayan creation account, where humans are created using two ingredients, corn and rainwater. When the two are brought together, the corn magically turns into human flesh, while the rainwater turns into human blood. But in the second meaning, it was viewed that just human flesh and blood needs to be sacrificed for the maize tree so it can be transformed back into maize and rainwater that causes it to grow. In fact, sacrificial rites to keep the maize tree alive and thriving are always needed. So here we have this interesting notion where, oh, see me, interesting notion where, so in the beginning, right? In the beginning, you have rain, see me, you have rain, and which is the water element, right? You have the rain, and you have corn. And so humanity is made out of rain, out of water and corn, and the corn becomes flesh, and the rain becomes blood. And so that makes us. But in order to keep everything going, this needs to be sacrificed in order for it to continue to have rain and to have corn. So you do have human sacrifice or animal sacrifice or a symbolic sacrifice, depending on the situation. Um, I want to go a little bit, and we're almost done. I'm going to go a little bit to the indigenous peoples of the Americas because you're going to freak out. Uh, Lakota Sioux Indians. So you have a supreme being known as Wonkin Tonka, existing from the beginning of the age in the darkness that's called Han. and feeling lonely, wishing companionship, right? The Great Spirit first created the god Inyan, who created rocks. Next, he used Inyan to create the goddess Maka, who is the earth. Now, the Great Spirit mated with Maka and produced Skan, who is the sky. Skan, with the assistance of the Great Spirit, Inyan, and Maka, created Y, who is the sun. Yet Inyan, the rock, Maka, the earth, Skan, the sky, and Y, the sun, were all four believed to be part of Wakantanka. So Wakantanka is one and yet four, much like we saw Ahura Mazda, who is one but six. But we actually see this multiplication. Of course, you have the Trinity, right? One and three. From there, the four gods create moon, wind, falling star, and thunderbird. These four gods in turn create other gods below them, including Nia, the breath of life, Nagi, the spirit of death, animals and humans. The Sioux in general believe the humans were formed out of Mother Earth, Maka, in just the same way as the buffalo. Are you seeing similarities? Right? You're seeing it because this kind of thing happens all around the world. Or the Cheyenne, right? The Cheyenne, they tell a great story of how great medicine created humanity. That may, according to great medicine, after he fashioned the heavens and the earth and the waters upon it, established a beautiful country far to the north, where was always the spring of the year, with trees bearing bountiful fruit and burbling brooks. Here, humans and animals were able to communicate easily with one another and lived in complete harmony. Now, the Cheyenne assert that great medicine created three races of humanity. What? The first kind had hair all over their bodies from head to toe, much like animal fur, and they were very strong and active. The second kind had white skin and had hair on their heads, cheeks, and legs. They were known to be quite cunning, like a wolf, and tricksters, those white ones. Finally, great medicine created the red people, who were swift and great runners, and he taught these people specifically how to catch fish. Now, the hairy people eventually moved south, and the red people decided to follow them, leaving the white people behind. But when they left, great medicine gave them a blessing, and he blessed them. And when he blessed them, a medicine spirit entered into them, awakening their minds, so that the red people became very intelligent. With this knowledge, the red people also realized they were naked and they clothed themselves. When the red people arrived in the mountains, so when it arrived in the lands of the south, excuse me, they found the hairy people still naked and living in caves in the mountains, afraid to come down. Eventually, the hairy people became less and less and disappeared altogether. Now, great medicine told the red people to come back north, for the land of the south was going to be under a great flood. Yet when they returned to the beautiful land, they found that the white people were gone and that many of the animals they knew well had gone also. Furthermore, they realized they could no longer talk to the animals like they had before, that gift suddenly being lost. Returning south following the flood, the red people encountered a second flood that scattered them, and they began to starve to death. But when they returned once more to the north, the beautiful land had disappeared. With no hope, going back south, they grew desperate, but great medicine had pity on them and introduced maize to them, teaching them how to grow it in abundance, and he also gave them buffalo meat to eat. Still, much of the magic taught by great medicine was remembered, and they handed this down to the knowledge to their children and their children's children. Again, you're seeing, but these are the indigenous peoples of the Americas, right? I mean, you're going to have stories of creation like the Navajo story, right? Where they believed that they were living in the fourth world created by the gods, each previous world destroyed because of humanity's wickedness. Now, when the people emerged into the fourth world, four gods approached them: white body, god of the earth; blue body, the sparkler; yellow body, and black body, the god of fire. And all four of them attempted to communicate with these newly arrived humans from the previous third world, at least the ones righteous enough to escape destruction. Yet, no matter what signs the four gods made to communicate to them, their minds were too underdeveloped to comprehend the gestures of the gods. Not only were they not intelligent enough to understand the most simple words of the gods, the four gods also noted that while they did not have the shape, they did have the shape of the gods with two arms and two legs and were standing upright. Their teeth were shaped like animal fangs, and their feet and fingers were claws instead of fingers and toes. Furthermore, they did not bathe and smelled very bad. So Blackbody decided humans should appear more like the gods, and calling the other three gods, two of them, devised the plan. First, they laid one sacred buckskin with its head to the west and placed an ear of white corn upon it, and under it a white eagle feather. Then they laid another sacred buckskin with its head to the east and laid a yellow ear of corn upon it with a yellow eagle feather. Next, the four gods caused the white wind blow from the east and the yellow wind blow from the west. Next, the mysterious mirage people arrived and danced around the buckskins, corn, and feathers four times. As a result, the white corn became man and the yellow corn became women, becoming the new, more godlike humans for the fourth world. And of course, the first women bore hermaphrodite twins, followed by sons, and yada. I mean, there's fascinating stories. We have Kochman stories. We have Tongva stories here. So many stories from around the world. And I know you're expecting, but I'm looking at the time, the biblical creation story. And my answer to that is we're out of time. But also, many of you already know the story, the Jewish story, the Christian story, the Muslim story of the creation of the world. And you'll realize through this that you have heard many of the same kinds of stories told all around the world. There are so many different similarities. And why is that? There are three ways of looking at this. The first possibility is as follows: oral tradition. As people spread, it's like telephone. As they spread and as they migrate, they take their stories with them. And when they encounter new groups, they hear their stories and they merge them together. And sometimes their environment dictates why those changes take place. And then they go further afield. So you have some of the same similar. So that's the first reason. The second possibility is common phenomenology. We are all humans, and because we're all humans, we will see the world in similar ways. And so, because of that, even though we may not be talking to each other, we'll still have some of the same ideas, even the same exact ideas through natural deduction, deductive reasoning. Well, we figure we must start with something that's simple and become more complex from there. The third is, which is the realm for mystics and spiritual people, is that maybe there is some truth out there. But what I do want to say about the Genesis story shared by Jews and Christians, as well as the Muslim version of the story, which is very similar, is that this multiplicity of creation, um, all those different gods and goddesses that are connected to all of these elements. It's as if somebody took the same stories, and they just removed those names and just left God in place. Because you still have the same, in many cases, the same spiritual architecture of the creation of the universe. You still have it, the same scaffolding that you see in Mesopotamia and other places. But the difference is that as opposed to having the multiplicity of gods and goddesses, they're all taken off that, in the sense that descending aspect or tree or whatever it may be, and is replaced by God, God. However, with that said, there's still something else that's going on. And that is, even in the biblical version, there is this need to have God still in different forms of him, her itself. And so you're going to have God, giving the breath of life, the ruha, which by the way is feminine, that gives life. You're also going to see the Genesis count. You're going to see two creations of humans. One just seems to be man, and the other is man and women, men and women, and both are the image of God. So the idea is God, his image is both masculine and feminine. You're going to have, of course, this big debate on 24-hour days. Are these literal days, or are these action, are these epics or eras? I do want to say that if you take a look at the Hebrew and you go through this, while it can be used as a 24-hour day, it's not always used as a 24-hour day. Sometimes it's even the word is even used for periods of time. The word, of course, is yom. There's a few clues, though, here and there. When you take a look at the creation story, you don't have a sun that exists at first, few days doesn't exist. And that's a timekeeper of a 24-hour day, right? So you don't have that. Also, you have a part that talks about plant life, and it talks about them germinating and going through descendants on one of the days. That can't take place in one day. That would have to be a period of time. And you take that word, and we look at other places in the Hebrew Bible, and it's like it can mean a period of time or an era. Now, if you want to know the ancient perspective of it, in ancient times, they always looked at it as an era. They didn't look at it as a 24-hour day. I can even go through and cite the specific scholars for the first, second, third, and fourth centuries on that make those references. And so that kind of goes on. Even, of course, Origin of Alexandria, Lactantius. Um, yeah, and so forth. It's interesting. I do want to say one more thing, is that a lot of people will take the creation of in the book of Genesis. People will take it literally. However, you do have those many of those look at it as an allegorical kind of understanding, that it is figurative or not symbolic, and you have many early Christians in the first 3 centuries that do view that. What is one thing I do want to bring up is that sometimes there's a conflict between what people learn from science and what they see uh, in religion. And this is where I kind of want to close with an interesting thought on this, because what about science? Uh, I think most people, not most people, I think a lot of people who are from many circles respect Augustine. But Augustine says some interesting things. I don't always agree with him, but he does have a work that's entitled "The Literal Interpretation of Genesis." And he says that in some places Genesis says things that are contrary to conventional understanding and common sense. And he says it is not infrequently happens that something about the earth, about the sky, about other elements of this world, about the motion, rotation, or even the magnitude and distance of the stars, about the definite eclipses of the sun and moon, about the passage of years and seasons, about the nature of animals, of fruits, of stones, and of other such things, may be known with greater certainty by reasoning or by experience, even by one who is not a Christian. You're quoting August. I'm quoting Augustine. It is too disgraceful and ruinous, though, and greatly to be avoided, that he, the non Christian, should hear a Christian speaking so idiotically on these matters, and as if in accord with Christian writings, that he might say that he could scarcely keep from laughing when he saw how totally in error they are. In view of this, and in keeping in mind the constantly, while dealing with the book of Genesis, I have, insofar as I have been able, explained in detail and set forth for consideration the meanings of obscure passage, taking care not to affirm rashly some one meaning to the prejudice of another, or perhaps better explanation. He says, furthermore, he says, with the scripture, it is a matter of treating about the faith. For that reason, as I have noted repeatedly, if anyone not understand the mode of divine eloquence should find something about these matters, about the physical universe in our books, or hear of the same thing from those books of such kind that it seems to be at variance with the perceptions of his own rational faculties, let him believe that these other things are no way necessary uh, to the admonitions or accounts or predictions of the scriptures. In short, it must be said that our authors knew the truth about the nature of the skies, but it was not the intention of the Spirit of God who spoke through them to teach men anything that would be not of use to them for their salvation. So, and he goes on. But I just want you to leave you this note that even somebody who are many consider very conservative as a theologian, as Augustine says, breathe. It's a lot of it's allegory. This is written as a faith document. Relax. And get into the spirit of it and the faith of it, as opposed to what is literally this and what is literally that. Is this good? Did you guys not? Nobody ever reads this from Augustine, and you probably see why. But I think I kind of brought this off. I think you have a great idea of different ways that the world was perceived to come about. We've also done a talk about how the world comes to an end. So maybe the real question is how should we live our life in between these two bookends? Hopefully, it's a life of kindness, of empathy, of compassion, of loving one's neighbor, and as helping those who are helpless, and caring about other people and spending time with family and friends, having much love and joy and bliss in their life. And with that, I say good night. It is finished.